And that's the end of the first half. As the teams head to the locker room, the Spartans lead the Bulldogs by a score.
You guys stink. Geez, Coach, we're only down a couple of points. No, I mean you guys really smell. You need to hit the showers. And here, I got every one of you new bars of soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Each bar is artisan crafted using natural ingredients and essential oils. They also have shave soaps, colognes, beard balm, and a whole lot more. Now get in there. But Coach, we have another half to play. I don't care. I can't stand to be around you.
A few minutes later.
All right, bring it in tight. You guys are still playing terrible, but you're smelling great out there. Now listen, you're going to need to stock up for the rest of the season. We got a lot of tough games left. So go to sterlingsoap.com after the game. That's STIRLING soap.com. You got that? Yes, Coach? Great. sterlingsoap.com on 3. 1, 2, 3. sterlingsoap.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Number 4, another no-brainer. Don't particularly like the dude, but just dudes. Michael Air Jordan. Don't like him, but he's one of the best of all times. He arguably the best of all time. In my personal opinion, I have Kareem number 1 as the greatest player as I've ever seen. But if someone wants to say Michael Jordan, I despite my personal feelings about him, right. I won't disagree with that. I've never owned a pair of Jordan sneakers, nor will I ever own a pair of Jordan sneakers.
No, I can't make that distinction because I have owned a couple pair of Jordans. I have owned a couple of Jordans. I'm not even gonna lie.
Well, I can tell you this much: I've killed a bunch of cats wearing Jordan sneakers.
And ladies and gentlemen, I was one of them.
I had on my Nike flights, and then you remember the old Reebok blacktop sneaker? Remember that?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Man, I was killing cats with that.
Sports from back in the day. From Atlanta, it's Dana on the mic, talking old school legends, bringing history to life. We go deep like a spiral in the Superdome. Back when athletes left the game due to talking alone. Jordan fadeaways, Jackie in the zone, Ali in the ring, man, he stood all alone. From the Negro Leagues to the ABA, we break it all down, yeah, the classic way. It's Charles from the district, straight out the boot. Southern University pride, repping truth in the booth. From Baton Rouge to the nation's capital, legends on deck. Yeah, we factual, tales of the greats, gold chains and all. Baseball, who dreams in that football brawl? No clickbait, no fluff, just the facts we say. It's historically speaking, sports from back in the game. So sit back, tune in, and hit replay. It's historically speaking sports, the classic way.
Every sports city has its legends. The athletes, coaches, and trailblazers whose accomplishments define generations of fans. But if you could honor only 4 people from each city, who would make the cut? That's the challenge we're taking on today. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, where we give you the best of sports from back in the day. I'm Dana Augusta. My co-host Charles Combs will be around shortly. Inspired by the iconic Mount Rushmore, we are building the ultimate Sports Mount Rushmore for some of America's greatest sports cities. We'll celebrate the icons whose championships, records, leadership, and cultural impact have left an unforgettable mark on their hometowns. I will reveal my Mount Rushmore for Washington, D.C., Oakland, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Houston, and Detroit, while Charles will make the case for Atlanta, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, Boston, and Miami. Will our choices match yours? Which legends are absolute locks, and which cities will spark the biggest debates? There are bound to be a few surprises and maybe even a few controversial omissions. So get your own list ready because this is one conversation every sports fan will want to be a part of. This is the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, a member of the Sports History Network.
Hey there. Welcome to Music Meets Sports, where sports legends meet custom soundtracks. Founded by music producer Ronald Tyke Oliver, Music Meets Sports was created to bridge generations, educate fans, and celebrate the greatness of both current and former athletes. We craft original songs about heroes in basketball, football, baseball, boxing, and beyond, highlighting their struggles and victories. Across all musical genres, we reintroduce fans to their favorite athletes in a way they've never heard before. From Babe Ruth to Reggie White, from rising WNBA stars to timeless NFL great stream, or download our music now on Apple Music, Amazon, and Spotify. Visit musicmeetsports.org to explore the catalog, hear new releases, and join the movement that's preserving sports history, one song at a time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back here on the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. I'm Dana Augusta, your trusty co-host, along with my main man, Charles Combs, who's coming at us once again on this Sunday evening as we record here for this podcast. And Chuck, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself? I'm doing okay.
I'm doing fine, man, and we're ready to crack this one open, crack up another interesting discussion tonight. And what we're talking about tonight is every city has a group of people, a group of sports figures that you could consider to be on the Mount Rushmore of that particular city. And what we're going to be doing is going through 12 different cities. I have chosen 6 random cities. Chuck has chosen 6 random cities. And we're going to discuss who do we think belongs on the Mount Rushmore of those particular cities. And this one is a subject that I wanted to tackle for a while now. And now since I have a co-host, I could really do the justice that I really think should be, in this case, for this topic. And came at this with Chalk a few weeks ago, and he was down with it, and we've gone with it ever since. And I think it's going to be a very interesting and maybe at times lively debate and discussion about what this means to both of us and the cities that we're going to be discussing. Before we unveil the cities that we're going to be talking about, Chuck, is there anything that you want to add before we start?
No, just looking forward, just quite intrigued because for both of our respective cities, we can both go a multitude of ways. So,
yep.
And a lot of times our thought process aligns many times, but there are other times where it vastly differs.
Oh yeah, I mean I like to say a lot of times that the two of us are basically two sides of the same coin. Okay, we both have very similar backgrounds, very similar value systems and that sort of thing, but we come at things differently depending upon strictly our own personalities. I'm more of a laid back, really cool, kind of take things in stride type of person. Chuck at times could be the opposite, especially during the times that we played basketball in college together. Very volatile, very irrational at times, but at the same time, at times could be laid back. But he's not afraid to voice his opinion in no uncertain terms.
Yes, sir. That's probably.
I mean, is that accurate? Is that accurate or what?
That's accurate and succinctly put, pretty much. So I can't argue with any of that, my man. I really can't.
Okay, so the cities that I've chosen, and we kind of did this in not necessarily in a strange way, but we did this in a very unique way. I am currently based in Atlanta. Chuck currently lives in the Washington, D.C. area. So what we did was, I wasn't going to talk about the Mount Rushmore of Atlanta. I'm going to leave that up to Chuck. as an outside observer. And I will do the same for Washington, D.C. And the cities that I'm going to be talking about, along with Washington, D.C., will be Oakland, California, Los Angeles, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Houston. Okay? And Chuck, along with Atlanta, what other cities you're going to be talking about?
In addition to Atlanta, I'll also be discussing Chicago, New York, Miami, San Francisco, and last but not least, Boston.
All right. So we got a nice mix of different cities that we're going to be talking about. And before we get started, any other things that you want to add before we kick this off?
Oh no. Let's get on with the task at hand, my brother.
Okay. And I will start first. I will go first. And the city that I chose that I'm going to start with is Washington, D.C., Charles' stomping ground. And what I'm going to do is, I'm not sure if Chuck's going to do this, but I'm going to do this, is that I will list the players, coaches, and other sports figures from that city that I did not choose, that I was in consideration, that I placed in consideration. Okay, before I give you my Mount Rushmore of the sports figures of Washington, D.C. And the guys that I had under consideration were Darryl Green, Sammy Baugh, Elvin Hayes, and John Riggins. Those are the people that I had under consideration. Okay, but my Mount Rushmore for the city of Washington, D.C. is the great eight himself, Alex Ovechkin of the Washington Capitals, Walter Johnson, a.k.a. the Big Train, the longtime pitcher of the Washington Senators of the early part of the 20th century, Wes Unseld of the Bullets in the 60s and 70s, and rounding it out, the coach himself, Joe Gibbs. So that's my Mount Rushmore for Washington. Alex Ovechkin, Walter Johnson, Wes Unseld, and Joe Gibbs. Okay. Before I get into their stats and everything, what do you think of that?
Well, go through it once again. You said Ovechkin, obviously. He should definitely be on the list. You said Wes Unseld. He should be on the list. The incomparable Joe Gibbs, and then you said Walter Johnson, right?
Walter Johnson, yes.
I can't argue with any of that stuff, man. It's because what I did for my list, and honestly, your pick is better than mine. I had Darryl Green, Wes Unseld, John Thompson, and Ovi. But to be honest with you, Joe Gibbs is a better pick than John Thompson. To be honest,
John Thompson, I also consider for a very short time, but honestly, it does. He is as successful as he was at Georgetown. I don't think that he measures up in the stature in D.C. as these guys. Alex Ovechkin, 2006 Rookie of the Year, 8-time first-team All-Star, 3-time NHL Most Valuable Player, 2018 Stanley Cup champ, 2000s and 2010s All-Decade teams of the National Hockey League, and he was a first-team member of those squads. He's probably the most famous player in the history of the Washington Capitals. You know, here's a franchise that's only been around since 1974, you know, in the NHL. They came in the NHL the same year as the Kansas City Scouts, which you now know of as the New Jersey Devils. But when you think of the Washington Capitals, you think of Alex Ovechkin. Then I have Walter Johnson, 1924 World Series champ, 2-time AL MVP, won the pitching triple crown 3 times, which is he led the American League in wins, strikeouts, and earned run average. And he did that in 1913, 1918, and 1924. 12-time strikeout leader. He pitched a no-hit on July 1st, 1920. This stat blows me away. He had 110 career shutouts in his career. 110 shutouts. And he was a member of Major League Baseball's All-Century team. That's crazy. 110 career shutouts.
That's getting it done, my brother. You can't argue. You can't argue with any of that. I mean, 110 shutouts, man, and then he won the pitching triple crown 3 times. You can't argue with that. Just
and if you ever saw footage of him pitching. He had this very funky sidearm delivery, and Ty Cobb said it himself, is that you couldn't see him. You just, one time somebody was batting against him, and it was said that he'd throw a ball, strike one, throw a ball, strike two. The third one came over, the umpire called it a strike, and the batter looked at him and said, I don't know, ump, that last one sounded a little low.
That's getting it done, man. And you can't go wrong with Walter Johnson. And then Ovechkin, self-explanatory, speaks for itself. I mean, because he, it kind of, his rise to fame and area kind of coincided with when I first started living here and all of that. Then they endured several.
Man, the Pittsburgh Pirates, Pittsburgh Penguins always got in their way.
Yeah, like Crosby always found a way to beat them. But then I think one year they were the 1 seed and they lost to the Canadians, who were the 8 seed one year. And they overcame all of that, and then finally, right when you thought that they weren't going to be able to get it done, and it was going to be a humongous what if, they finally broke through and won the cup. So you can't argue with him. Wes Unseld, greatest with the exception of he's the best outlet passer I've ever seen. Kevin Love is in the conversation rather, but you got to go with Wes Unseld, and we kind of chronicled them quite a bit a few episodes back, in conjunction with the what was that, the Miracle at Richfield episode. About a couple
months back. Wes Unseld, you were talking about, 1978 NBA champ, 1978 Finals Most Valuable Player. The last person in NBA history, him and Wilt Chamberlain, are the only ones ever to win league MVP and Rookie of the Year in the same year, 1969. Five-time NBA All-Star, 1975 rebounding leader, and he's a member of the 50th and 75th anniversary teams for the Washington Bullets. And Joe Gibbs round out the Mount Rushmore for the nation's capital. 3-time Super Bowl champion, won three Super Bowls with 3 different starting quarterbacks. 2-time NFL Coach of the Year, 1982 and 1983. 154 career wins in the regular season. Had a 17-7 postseason record with a career overall record of 171 and 101. So for the nation's capital, the Mount Rushmore of DC, Alex Ovechkin, Walter Johnson, Wes Unseld, and the great Joe Gibbs.
Yes, the great Joe Gibbs. You got to think about it. He's 70 games rather, over 500, and that's also considering the dreadful return to DC. Well, they were decent, but he did a decent job with them rather, but they were kind of like a mediocre team. And then you also have to factor in, even though it's not DC related, he went on to just have just as much success in NASCAR as well. So it just seems like whatever he touched is gold, and he just seems to have some type of value system and way of and work ethic, always ensures ultimate success. Kudos to him.
And Joe Gibbs, he coached at a time in the NFC where the NFC East was pretty much, if you won the NFC East, you was essentially a considerable favorite to win the Super Bowl during his heyday during the 80s. Whoever came out of the NFC, whether it was Philly or Dallas or New York or the Redskins, whoever came out of the East was not only one of the top teams in the NFL, but they were also probably the toughest team in the NFL because of the wars that they had to deal with in that division during that time. And Joe Gibbs was a big contributor and factor in that division in that decade.
Yes, sir. And then you also, speaking of said division, you also have to take in consideration, and I think we've discussed this before, you have to take into consideration a great coach always knows how to adapt his approach to the talent that he has to work
Yeah.
with. And he's coming from an assistant coach with under that disciple of Air Coryell system,
Yep.
and he brought it over to the Skins. And obviously, they still had components of that with the deep passing game. Who was it? Joe. It was Joe Theismann, Doug Williams, and then also Mark Rippon. But then, to your point, to also combat the division that he was in, because Philly, New York, especially, Dallas, that was the kind of the latter part, the tail end of the Landry era and the beginning of the Jimmy Johnson era as well, coinciding with his tenure. They always had great defenses, stuff to run, could really get after the quarterback. And so he was able to adapt this approach and really be a ground and pound sort of team to enable his quarterback to remain upright so they can take said deep shots down the field and get big plays in the passing game.
Okay, so that was my Washington, D.C. So we're going to turn it back over. We're going to turn it over to Chuck, and he's going to go with his Mount Rushmore. And what city you're going to do first, Chuck?
I'm going to do Atlanta, GA first.
All right. My home, my current home right now, Atlanta.
Your home.
Okay. Who you got? We
got to go with. I'm not going to say the very first superstar, but the very first. No, I was going to say the very first superstar in the major sports, which I'll just switch it. We're going to go with the Hammer and Hank, Henry Aaron, baby. That's what we're going to do today.
Yep.
So, enough said. Hall of Famer, MVP, 25, and I repeat, 25-time All-Star. Won the World Series title in 57, 2-time batting title, 3-time Gold Glove, and until Barry Bonds superseded him, and many people put that with a asterisk. I don't. I'll explain that more later.
Okay.
755 homers, 305 batting average lifetime, nearly 2,300 RBIs, which is getting it done, 2,297 to be exact. Then also you got to remember in them early days, Hank could fly a little bit in them early days. 240 stolen bases. Then he also had nearly 4,000 hits, which is a testament to his talent, a testament to his longevity, a testament to his durability, with 3,771 hits. And then he was also an ambassador for the game, like his quest to break Babe Ruth's record. It kind of, in a way, defied some social norms at the time.
Yes.
In terms of segregation, in terms of segregation of fandom, like many times, down there in the deep South, whites and blacks have different interests, but then everybody came together in most cases, to support that. And if I remember correctly, when he was rounding the bases, wasn't that the late great Craig Sager that was running it with him?
Well, Craig Sager was actually at home plate when he arrived at home plate, ready to interview him. There were two guys, and their names escape me, but they're two Atlanta natives, and they interviewed both of them like a couple days after Hank Aaron passed away, and they were talking about how they jumped the fence and was rounding the bases and stuff with him. And the great Andrew Young said that it was scary, but at the same time, it was very beautiful to see Hank Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's record and two white fans coming up as he's rounding bases to congratulate him. He said that was like one of the most beautiful moments he had ever seen as a native of Atlanta. And it kind of he kind of said that this was an example of what Atlanta's all about, and he's right. Atlanta has always been known as the city too busy to hate. And, among other, the Peachtree City and, the city in the forest and all of that. But the one that really sticks with me as someone who lives here in Atlanta is the city too busy to hate. And that was an emblematic moment in that sort of statement that that Andrew Young presented, and that was just like an absolute perfect example of that.
Yes, it was. Then also in the context of that, even though most people were cheering him on because, a lot of times, despite personal feelings, a lot of times in sports, it comes to a point where game just recognizes game a lot of times.
Yeah.
Even if I don't personally like a guy,
Right.
and if he's getting it done,
If he's getting it done, he's getting it done. I mean, you can't argue. You can't
line.
argue with that, right?
But however, they did have some dissension and some detractors, which sometimes came in the form of death threats. And speaking of those two people that ran the bases with him, he wasn't sure initially whether or not they were coming to celebrate or coming for other means and all of that. But fortunately, it was the former and all of that. And just one of the all-time great moments in American sports, but also American society as well, just American history as well. So one of the all-time greats. Okay, now this next guy we always talked about, a lot of times the NBA kind of do this abridged version of the NBA history in terms of the rise to fame and the rise to stardom and all of that. The story usually goes Bill Russell, Will Chamberlain, they played. It was okay in terms of the interest. Then the interest died in the 70s. Then the ABA merger came. Dr. J came and inject a much needed lifeline and blood into the NBA, but they were still on life support until Bird and Magic came into the league, and then that catapulted it to stardom. And then Jordan took over and catapulted that, also with the backdrop of the 92 Olympics in Barcelona to superstardom and the global appeal that we have today.
Right.
However, I've always maintained several times on the various episodes that we've had that, yes, Magic and Bird were very, very essential, and they led the charge, which key word, led.
Yeah.
So they had because a lot of times, no matter how big your stardom is, you're only as good as your foils, man. So, and they had a lot of people, the Isaiah Thomases, your Mark Aguirres, your Adrian Dantleys, your Moses Malones, your cats like that. But this particular cat here, he's the original Metro Atlanta current star in a sense. And that's none other than the human highlight reel himself, Dominique Wilkins. Man,
yes. Dominique Wilkins is pretty much still. The Hawks have had a lot of really great players to come through Atlanta over the years. And even though a lot of them, you really can't pick them out of a lineup. Okay, guys like Mookie Blaylock and Stacey Augmon and Joe Johnson and Marcus Teague and Josh Smith, guys like that were good, but never pushed the needle. Never pushed the needle as far as like popularity. They never got more popular than beyond the suburbs of Atlanta. Dominique Wilkins, however, changed all of that. I mean, you think when somebody asks you, quick, when you think of Atlanta Hawks, who do you think of? Dominique Wilkins.
Yes,
That's it. That's it. That's nobody else. I mean, you've had a lot of great players to come through wearing the Hawks uniform, but none of them have ever approached the popularity of the human highlight film. Never. Nobody has.
Yes, sir. He's the best. He's Mr. Hawk himself. Just listen to these credentials. Hall of Fame, obviously. 9-time All-Star. 7-time All-NBA.
Yep.
1 scoring title. Top 75 all time. Now, my sentiment. Okay, I love the top 75. Right?
Yeah.
How in the world he wasn't top 50?
50.
Is beyond me. I still don't understand it. It still doesn't make sense to me. It just, because you remember, because everybody forget, this was before, CBS would have the weekend games. This was prior to ESPN doing the games during the week. This was prior to TBS doing their national coverage with Bob Beal. Back in the days, if you wanted to see some basketball during the week, USA Network briefly had a game where they'll show some nighttime games, mostly the Lakers on the West Coast, the USA Network. But other than that, you had two choices. You either had, similar to baseball, you either had the Hawks on WTBS or you had the Bulls on WGN. That was it.
That was it.
But Dominique Wilkins, TBS, I still remember TBS was number 30. We had 13 channels with the old dial. That's before expanded cable and the cable box. You dial it, and WTBS was channel 13.
Channel 13. Us is channel 12.
It was
Us
three
is channel 12.
It was a handful of things WTBS was good for. You could find a great Western on there, like any John Wayne movie you wanted, The Magnificent Seven. And my dad, man, I'd be trying to sleep. My dad used to have the TV turned on 100. You'd be like, man, damn. You know what I mean? Like, but you can't say nothing. He the man of the house. So he earned the right to do as he wants, right? Then you had the Braves were dreadful in those days.
Yes, they were.
Then the only other thing you had worth note was on Saturday night at 6:05 Central Standard Time. NWA / Georgia
Championship Wrestling. Yep.
We're going solely.
Yep.
Going solely.
That was the three major things.
That was it.
The Hawks, the Braves, which were bad, and I learned a lot of baseball watching the Braves lose. Georgia Championship Wrestling, and of course you had, I could always remember Skip Carey, at the, toward the end of the Braves game, coming up next on the Superstation, the Magnificent Seven, starring Steve McQueen and Yul Brynner. So stay tuned for that. Braves 1 out away from their 4th consecutive loss. Stuff like that,
Or you got to remember, sometimes he'll say, coming up at 7 Eastern tonight, it's going to be first the Big Valley, the Barkley clan. Mama Barkley was gangster though. Mama Barkley was gangster. Then it'd be like followed by Gunsmoke. Matt Dillon was always a dog, but Festus used to do too much huffing and puffing for me to say that he was a scrub and a sucker. Man, be quiet, man. You know what I mean? But but Dominique, 24.8 points a game, 6.7 boards, 2.5 assists per game, and he it was just must-see TV, especially the mid-'80s games with the Bulls, man, when Jordan.
Oh, my gosh.
They had like a series of games where they were scoring like 40 apiece. It was crazy.
It was so much fun, and we would go to school the next day, because back then you had your own Dominique Wilkins faction and you had a Michael Jordan faction. Okay, I was part of the Dominique faction. I'm not even going to trip. I was part of the Dominique faction. Okay, because, and I'll still to this day think the 88 dunk contest.
He won.
Dominique won that one. Dominique won that one, but Jordan, it was at Chicago Stadium. Of course, of course the Bulls are gonna, they were gonna give him the championship. And Charlie Neal said it. They gave Jordan the championship. They gave Jordan the championship. Yep, they gave it to him. Go ahead.
Remember, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
No, I was about to say, like, you got Hank Aaron and you got Dominique. Who else you got for Atlanta? I'm curious.
Okay. One more thing about Dominique, though. He was the first cat they were double pumping in traffic. Oh,
He
double pumping and blapped on poor Lanier.
Bob Lanier.
He double pumping blapped on poor Bob Lanier. And I remember one time he came down the lane with the tomahawk. Robert Parrish was under the goal.
Yeah.
And he saw how fast he was coming. Robert Parrish made a business decision not to. He's like, man, I'm out the way. But anyway, on to my next. My next Mount Rushmore Atlanta is none other than Neon Dion, aka Primetime Deion Sanders, baby. You know what I mean? He was kind of after Dominique. He kind of picked up where Dominique left off, and he was kind of, to me, he kind of coincided with really the ushering in of the hip hop era. This is when all of the New Yorkers started, the enjoying their spoils, they moved to Atlanta because it was much cheaper and all of that. I remember Eric Sermon, Keith Sweat, they were among the first to relocate from New York to Atlanta, and the burgeoning scene that it ultimately became in the 90s, and then what it's kind of regressed into what we presently have there. But anyway, Deion Sanders, man, he was kind of a catalyst for that from a sports perspective as well. Obviously, Pro Football Hall of Famer, best cornerback of all time, bar none. None, best cover man of all time, bar none. Football Hall of Famer, 8-time Pro Bowl, 6-time All-Pro, 2 Super Bowl titles, Hall of Fame, all 1990s decade team, and 1994 Defensive Player of the Year, and several touchdowns via the return, the reverse, the interception return. Just a great football player, and just had this huge, loquacious personality that was larger than life, and his game backed it up. And then he was also very good in baseball, and would have potentially been, at minimum, a perennial all-star type of player in baseball had he had more time to devote to it. But baseball, mixed success, but he was very good when he needed to be. 263 average overall, 39 homers, 169 runs batted in, 186 stolen bases, and he finished with 558 hits. Not bad for a part-time baseball player. And, arguably the toughest thing in sports to do is hit a baseball. Now, for my final Mount Rushmore, I'm sorry we're not supposed to do this, but I have to do it because they are two sides of the exact same coin. These two guys of 2 or 3 people to blow the roof off the Omni at Atlanta, with the aforementioned Dominique Wilkins being the third. This is none other than the Nature Boy Ric Flair and the American Dream Dusty Rhodes. You understand? I got to put him on there because we were talking about Georgia Championship Wrestling. We were talking about in the NWA. Then it became WCW. Then the Monday Night Wars, the Four Horsemen, Dusty Rhodes and Nikita Koloff. You remember when Magnum TA got hurt with a career-ending injury? Nikita Koloff, they came up with the idea to turn Nikita Koloff, a perennial heel, into a face, and he got with the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff, that is, and he got with the American Dream Dusty Rhodes to form the formation of the superpower. The USA and the USSR, man, against the Four Horsemen, kicking butt, you know what I mean? And then, Vince always bite him because he swear he doesn't watch any other wrestling. But just brief, we're going to talk about it very briefly. He comes with the superpowers. He doesn't watch any other wrestling. Then magically 6 months later, he has a team called the Mega Powers with Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man Randy Savage. Then, remember, he didn't watch any other wrestling. We had the Rock and Roll Express. That's Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, baby. The matches with Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express. That's Beautiful Bobby Eaton. Then
that's some names from back in the day, man.
When Dennis Condrey left, they ushered in Sweet Stan Lane. Boy, he had a snake for your butt. Could nobody do the snake better than Sweet Stan Lane, baby. But next thing you know, WWF, here they come with the Rockers with Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. Basically the same get up as the Rock and Roll Express. And then last but not least, you had the Road Warriors. Used to wear the big spikes.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, they come with old imitation T-Boo brand Demolition, Axe and Smash. You know what I mean? But anyway, these two guys, they were the perfect foils of each other. Ric Flair represented the elite. The man born with the golden spoon, rich guy. He was the Rolex watches, the alligator shoes, $1,000 suits, and he can have any woman that he wants, just like that. You understand?
Wow.
And and Ric Flair, he had a couple of good sayings, man. He say, to be the man,
you gotta beat the man.
Then he also said, jumping on is a lot easier than jumping off. You understand? Then he also said, none of you can be first, but you can all be next. So then on the other side, we had the common everyday man. That was
Dusty
the total
Rhodes.
antithesis. The American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. By the way, Ric Flair, 16-time champion, 16-time world champion. Dusty Rhodes, 3-time world champion. Memorable feuds with Ric Flair and Tully Blanchard with Baby Doll. You understand?
Yeah.
Dusty used to. Everybody remember the Hard Times promo. Everybody remember that one. But my favorite saying about Dusty Rhodes is the following. He said, quote unquote, "I've dined with kings and queens, and I've dined in an alley on pork and beans." You understand? So that means he's been up and he's been down. And the common man can relate to that. And I mean, the 80s, it was just epic. The battles with Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, the Four Horsemen, Davy Crockett, Gordon Soley, then Jim Ross, just those guys. So, J.J. Dillon was the mastermind, along with Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard and Ole Anderson, and just a great time. So I got both of them kind of on the Mount Rushmore. And
so you got Hank Aaron, Dominique Wilkins, Deion Sanders, and Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. Okay, which is pretty good. I just got one question.
Yes, sir.
Not Evander Holyfield?
I started to put Evander Holyfield on there, man. I started to, but as far as the impact in my life, and as far as when we're talking about Atlanta, Atlanta
is known for wrestling. It is a wrestling hotbed here.
The big cities in Atlanta were in the South were like Dallas with the
world class wrestling.
But that's with the Von Erich boys. That movie, The Iron Claw, man, that is a great movie. But tragic though, the Von Erich story. Then you had Baton Rouge and Shreveport and
New Orleans with Mid-South.
With Mid-South wrestling. That's Hacksaw Butch Reed. That's Hacksaw Jim Duggan before he became a clown. Then the Junkyard Dog, JYD. Then you remember when the Freebirds blinded the Junkyard Dog.
Yeah.
And then Cowboy Bill Watts had to take care of business and run them out of town. Don't get me started today. Then we also
just for that, and let people know that in a couple of weeks we're going to be doing the first ever wrestling episode for here on the Historically Speaking Sports. So please stay tuned for that, because we're gonna have a lot of memory. We're gonna go down a lot of memory lanes with that episode coming up. So Atlanta is known for wrestling.
Yes.
That's the one. The one part I really thought that with as much as you love boxing, I thought that you were going to go with Evander Holyfield.
I wanted to, but I just feel that in my lifetime and in Southern culture overall, that
it's wrestling.
Flair and Dusty Rhodes had a larger impact. Because even saw like Outcast and Southern Playalistic. I'm slanging these bowls like Dusty Rhodes did. I'm telling, like everybody, because Dusty had that black dialect to the way that he talked. He got it from Thunderbolt Patterson, but he enhanced it and took it to the next level. But Dusty talked like he grew up around grew up in the hood and grew up in the church and grew up in the barbershop and all of that. So and then to play that off of the quintessential rich guy, smoother than butter, always gets what he wants, talks all kind of stuff, but he always wins. It was just a perfect combination, man, and what a time it was.
Okay, so the next city that it's going to be my turn, and the next city that I'm going to talk about is the city of Oakland. Now, before we go too far, I want to at least alert the listeners to this. Okay. In the preparation for this episode, I had misunderstood Chuck because I really thought Chuck was going to do the Golden State. He was going to include He was going to include the Golden State Warriors when he talked about San Francisco. And we all know that Oakland had been the home base of the Warriors for decades. And just recently they had moved to San Francisco. And so I let him, so he's going to cover the Golden State Warriors when he talks about this when he talks about the city of San Francisco and that Mount Rushmore. Just to let everybody know, we already know that the Warriors had played most of their history in Oakland. So my Mount Rushmore of Oakland does not include any Warriors. Okay. So I just wanted to get that disclaimer out there. And there was a clerical error on my end. So whatever Warriors that he has on his list is going to be part of San Francisco. So I just wanted to get that out. Okay. Now, Oakland, the hometown of one of my all-time favorite rappers, Too Short. And Chuck will tell you, anywhere we went in my car, in my old beat-up Chevy Beretta, you always had a couple of CDs and a couple of tapes in my car with Born to Mac, Mr. Too Short himself. You know, Too Short, I'm that rapping man. What's my favorite word? If you know it, you know it.
What about this one? Ronald Reagan came up to me and asked, do you have the answer to the U.S. economy and the cure for cancer? I said, what are you doing in the White House if you're not selling cocaine? Ask your wife, Nancy Reagan. I know she'll spit that cane. Boy,
Yes,
we used to
indeed.
boy, that old Beretta used to be, whoa.
Yep.
Man, it
So,
was a fun day. Too bad
Those
we
are
got to
some
get
great
old, baby.
days, man. So, under consideration, these are the sports figures from Oakland that I had under consideration. I had Fred Biletnikoff, Ken Stabler, Gene Upshaw, Ricky Henderson, Dennis Eckersley, and Jose Canseco. Those are the guys who I had under consideration, but they did not make the list for me. And Chuck is giving me this face like, okay, what the hell are you talking about? Who's better? I'm about to show you. Okay? The players and sports figures in Oakland that I have for the Mount Rushmore that made Oakland was Raleigh Fingers, John Madden, Al Davis, and the longtime announcer for the Raiders and A's, Bill King. Now, let me start with Bill King first. Bill King is one of my all-time personal broadcasting idols. He is famous for the Holy Toledo catchphrase. Holy Toledo, the Raiders have just scored. So he was the voice of the Raiders and the A's for 40 years. And he was the voice of those teams. And he was pretty much the soundtrack of Oakland sports from the mid 1960s to the early 2000s, pretty much. He actually was started with the Golden State Warriors as their broadcaster from 1962 to 1983. But he's best known for the Raiders, 1966 through 1992, and that includes their time in Los Angeles. And he was also the Oakland A's announcer from 1981 to 2005. So that pretty much takes care of a long swath of great sports to take place in the city of Oakland. And if you want to go back, Historically Speaking Sports had done an episode a few years back about the exodus of Oakland and all of the Oakland teams that have left the city of Oakland to supposed greener pastures and their histories in the city by the bay. Well, I should say the other city by the bay. The others, Raleigh Fingers, 7-time All-Star, 3-time Major League Baseball World Series champ, 1981 AL Most Valuable Player, 4 times Rolay's Relief Man of the Year Award, 3-time MLB saves leader in 77, 78, and 81. Then you have the incomparable John Madden, Raiders head coach, career record 112, 37, 39, and 7. Super Bowl champion from Super Bowl 11, won the AFL championship in 67, and was the 1969 AFL Coach of the Year. And to round it out, none other than Al Davis, the man who gave the Oakland its image and the Raiders its image. three-time Super Bowl champ as an owner, two-time NFL Executive of the Year, AFL Coach of the Year in 1963, and the 1966 AFL Commissioner. Now, during his tenure as commissioner, he was the one to wage all-out war against the NFL by signing big-name stars from the NFL to the AFL. Because he got guys like Roman Gabriel to sign with the Oilers, the former Rams quarterback to sign with the Oilers. He went after a whole. He got Mike Ditka to come and sign with a team from the Bears to the AFL. He basically that he pretty much preempted and caused the merger in 1966 by raging all out war against the National Football League. So that's my Mount Rushmore of Oakland. Raleigh Fingers with his handlebar mustache, which is pretty much, in my opinion, the personification of Oakland in the 70s. The famous handlebar mustache and the green and yellow uniforms of the Oakland A's of the 70s. Raleigh Fingers, John Madden, Al Davis, and the longtime radio announcer for KNBR Radio, Bill King.
Okay, that's not bad, but also with Al Davis, he's undefeated versus the NFL in court.
Yes,
he's undefeated. He's the only person that used to beat the NFL in court consistently. But no George Blanda, no harmonica, no Reggie Jackson, and no Ricky Henderson. He spoke of himself in third person. Man, you got to have Ricky.
I considered all of that. Okay, Reggie Jackson. I really seriously considered Reggie, but Reggie's best years was when he was in New York. If you really think about it, his best years was in New York. That's when he was the most famous. The A's won 3 World Series with Reggie Jackson, but he played in only 2 of them because the World Series in '72, he got hurt in the ALCS against Detroit and missed the entire World Series. Okay, and to me, in my opinion, he's best known as being a Yankee. That's just me. Blanda, it was toward the end of his career, and in my opinion, he's best known as an Oiler.
Okay.
Ricky Henderson, he was on my list, and then I took him off, then I put him back on the list, and I took him off the list. So, he was seriously considered. So, and all the others, Canseco, I considered.
Nah, not good long enough.
Yeah, Gene Upshaw is pretty much, he was the Raiders, with that anybody that could take Mean Joe Green. He had a cast on his thumb, and he could drop Mean Joe Green with his thumb in a cast. I mean, and Gene Upshaw came up with the time-honored phrase, "If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying."
That's it. That's it right there.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Hey man, you know me. That's how it goes, man. But not a bad list. I can't. I really have no serious disagreements or dissensions with that list. So
okay,
no problem.
So we got Oakland out of the way, and just a reminder: Raleigh Fingers, John Madden, Al Davis, and Bill King. Okay, so where we going next? Where on the map we're going next?
We're gonna go with Chicago. Now, before I get started, man, okay. Chicago is just such a city. A lot of my favorite movies, man. Ferris Bueller Day Off, man.
Yeah.
The Blues Brothers, Love Jones. Love Jones. What's the other one?
The Shy. I love that show.
The Shy. Cooley High.
Yeah.
And what's the Running Scared with Billy Crystal and Gregory Hines?
Right.
A lot of great films has taken place in Chicago as the setting. But anyway, the following people I had for reasonable to strong consideration, but decided against enshrining them. I had the late great, my favorite baseball player, Ryan Sandberg, of course. I had him. I had Derek Groves. I had Mike Ditka. I had Dick Butkus, and then late great Harry Carey. I had those had those five. I had those five. I gave them reasonable consideration, but ultimately decided against it. So my four goes as follows. Number one, Mr. Cub, Ernie Banks. That's number one. Hall of Fame, two-time MVP, Gold Glove, 14-time All-Star, 512 homers, 1,636 RBIs, 50 steals, 2,583 hits, 274 batting average. And, he played for some Cub teams that were just god awful, man. And the only bright spots were he, Ron Santo, and sweet swinging Billy Williams, man. Other than and Ferguson Jenkins. Other than that, they were garbage. Other than that, so but number one is Ernie Banks. Second, which may be a surprise to you, but here at the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, we give credit where it's due, even if we're not necessarily familiar with this. This took a little research for me, but number two, Patrick Kane, Chicago Blackhawks, white right wing. I'm not a hockey guy, but
that's a good choice.
The just dudes are the just dudes, man. I don't know a lot about hockey, so you probably can fill in a lot better than me in terms of after I read off the bullet points. But the just dudes are the just dudes, man. 3-time Stanley Cup winner, 4-time All-Star, NHL 100th anniversary team, 2007 to 2008 All Rookie winner, the 2012-2013 Smythe Trophy, the 2015 to 2016 Hart Trophy, the 2007 to 2008 Calder Memorial Trophy winner. He won the Ross Trophy in 2016, as well as the Pearson Trophy in 2016. He has 508 goals, 892 assists with 1,400 points. So you take a 3-time Stanley Cup winner and NHL 100th anniversary team and in hockey, multiple time champion. He has to be on the list, whether I'm familiar with it or not. And that's the beautiful thing about greatness. A lot of times greatness does not require familiarity, so Patrick Kane.
Okay. Patrick Kane is an awesome choice. And I'm surprised that you went with a Blackhawk. I just think that you went with the wrong one.
Okay. School.
You could have gone either. Patrick Kane is an awesome choice. Okay. Stan Mikita and Bobby Hall. Those two was pretty much one championship, one Stanley Cups with the Blackhawks in the 60s. They are pretty much Chicago Blackhawk royalty. Patrick Kane is just an unbelievable, is a tremendous choice. Led them to the recent resurgence of the Blackhawks, because for years and years and years, they had always been the second fiddle to all the other Chicago teams. Okay, as someone who spent summers in Chicago as a teenager, the Blackhawks were everybody was still talking about Bobby Hall and Stan Mikita, in the 1960s. But Patrick Kane pretty much resurrected that franchise. So putting him as a member of the Chicago's Mount Rushmore is a surprise, but it's also is due. It is actually a very, very good choice.
Okay, I defer to you on that because like boxing, to me, far more about hockey than I do. So of course, I defer to you on that. But Patrick Kane. Okay. Next two, pretty much no brainers. The next two.
Okay.
Number 3, sweetness, Walter Payton. Pretty much no brainer.
Yes.
Hall of Fame. 8-time Pro Bowl, 5-time first team All-Pro, won the Super Bowl 1977, consensus MVP by the AP, UPI, the PFWA, 2-time NEA MVP. He's a Hall of Fame member of the All 70s and the All 80s team. 1977 Offensive Player of the Year. 1985 Burt Bell Award. 2-time Sport News Player of the Year, 1985 UPI Offensive Player of the Year, and 1977 Walter Payton award. I think that's usually like some type of community service or sportsmanship
Yeah,
type
it's a
of deal.
sportsmanship community
Yep.
service, the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award, which is named, of course, after Sweetness.
Then he had brother had played 190 games, rushed for 16,726 yards, 4.4 average, 110 touchdowns, and also included a handful of touchdowns from the quarterback position as well,
Yes.
passing the ball. And he held the all-time rushing record nearly 20 years, and
Yeah.
until he was eclipsed by Emmitt Smith. But Walter Payton is the better player, but
It is
can't
what it
argue with
is.
that. It is what it is. So Walter Payton, number 3. Number 4, another no-brainer. Don't particularly like the dude, but just dudes. Michael Air Jordan. Don't like him, but he's one of the best of all times. He arguably the best of all time. In my personal opinion, I have Kareem number 1 as the greatest player as I've ever seen. But if someone wants to say Michael Jordan, I despite my personal feelings about him,
Right.
I won't disagree with that. I've never owned a pair of Jordan sneakers, nor will I ever own a pair of Jordan sneakers.
No, I can't make that distinction because I have owned a couple pair of Jordans. I have owned a couple of Jordans. I'm not even gonna lie.
Well, I can tell you this much: I've killed a bunch of cats wearing Jordan sneakers.
And ladies and gentlemen, I was one of them.
I had on my Nike flights, and then you remember the old Reebok blacktop sneaker? Remember that?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Man, I was killing cats with that. But anyway, man, he's 2-time slam dunk champion, Hall of Fame, 14-time All-Star, 10-time scoring champ, 6-time NBA champ, 6-time NBA Finals MVP, 3-time steal champ, 11-time All-NBA, 19 All-Rookie Team, 9 times All-D. He was the 1987, 1988 Defensive Player of the Year, and he led the league in scoring the same season.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Now, I don't like this dude, but for people to sit here and say LeBron is better than this dude,
that's ludicrous.
It's insane.
It's ludicrous and it's a lazy argument. It is a lazy argument.
I can't stand him. But
and you got to again. The truth is the truth, and we're going to get to. I'm in the same boat with somebody else that I'm going to be talking about later, which I can't argue with the fact that how good he was, but I wasn't a big fan of his.
Yeah.
So
5-time
go ahead.
MVP and then also 75 anniversary team as well as the 50, and also the winner of 2 gold medals. He averaged 30. He averaged basically 30 a game for his career, and averaged like 35 in the playoffs. Man, I don't like the dude, but come on, man, serious baller.
But for Chicago, great list, great Mount Rushmore. I have one different person that you did not include.
Talk to me.
And if you didn't include him, that's fine. But what is Chicago sports without George Halas?
Sure.
George Halas. I mean,
Sure.
That's who I had.
The Papa Bear, sure.
I put together my own list. I did not put Patrick Kane or any of the couple of the hockey players that I had. I didn't put Stan Mikita. I didn't put Bobby Hall. But I did have Jordan. I did have Walter Payton. I did have Halas, and I also had Ernie Banks. So, off the top of my head, that's what I thought of Chicago. And again, I spent my summers in Chicago. All those guys that you talked about are like legendary, and that's probably, a very easy one to do as far as like no-brainers are concerned. Michael Jordan, of course, is a no-brainer. Yes. Walter Payton obviously is a no-brainer. Ernie Banks is a no-brainer. They are also, he's still probably the most famous Chicago Cub ever. All these years later, he's still Mr. Cub. Okay. Yes. So moving on. My next city I'm going to do, and this one, oh my God, gave me. I did like a rough draft of what this was, of what we're doing here tonight. I did like a rough draft on a sheet of paper. And this city has so many scratch outs and changes that I had to make to this because the city I'm talking about is the City of Angels, Los Angeles. And there was so many that you could consider no-brainers that I had to cut it down to 4. Okay. And this was so difficult. And if you just look at the players that I had, the people that I had under consideration, it's like a who's who of LA sports. And these were under consideration, y'all. Under consideration for Los Angeles, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Tommy Lasorda, Kobe Bryant, Marcus Allen, Fernando Valenzuela, and Jerry West. Those did not make the cut. Okay? I had to go with 4. And like I said, there were so many cutouts and so many scratch outs that I had to do. But I got it down to 4. And boy, was this hard. And I know there might be a few that you may disagree with, but this is what I had. This is what I went with. The Mount Rushmore for the city of Los Angeles: Irvin Magic Johnson, Sandy Koufax, John Wooden, and Vin Scully.
Oh boy, I can't argue with that, honestly. I have some dissensions, but I can't. Man, you can't, man. Like for me, I had Deacon Jones, Magic Johnson, Fernando, and Kobe. Because you remember in the early '80s, we were watching, Fernando Mania. You remember that? Because we lived that in the early '80s.
I considered him, but his career
wasn't good very long.
It wasn't good for very long. Now, he did play for the Dodgers, and he also played for the Angels. Angels. Yeah. So it's pretty much Southern California based. But it was just like the 81 through 85, he was like one of the best pitchers in baseball. And then he just fell off a cliff.
Well, he was throwing that screwball, and I think that messed his shoulder up. He had that screwball, man. That thing used to fall out of the sky too, man. But man. But no, Magic Johnson, you didn't have him on the list at all.
I thought Deacon Jones. I thought about it, but it's hard to find like one person from the Rams that was just above and beyond, like, emblematic of LA. I tried to find somebody, but I just couldn't. With him. I don't know. He had a great personality. He was this over-the-top personality, the man who invented the sack. I get it. Hit the head slap. But he didn't rise to, and he never won a championship. But he didn't rise to, in my opinion, to being iconic to Los Angeles like these guys are. Okay.
Let me ask you. Now, you're known for not putting your personal biases into your decisions. Did that play a role in the omission of Kobe? Come on, man.
No, because I tried to be straight up honest with the way I felt about it, and Kobe was on my list for a while. Kobe, one of the last people that I replaced. Okay. And he's beloved in LA. He's beloved throughout all the NBA. Personal feelings aside, I'm not a big Kobe fan, but he was on the list until I thought of Sandy Koufax. And I replaced Sandy Koufax. I took Kobe off for Sandy Koufax. Why? I'm explaining to you why in a minute. Okay. Let's start with Magic. No brainer. He is the personification of LA. If you really think about it, he is the personification of LA. 5-time NBA champion, 3-time NBA Finals MVP, 3-time Finals MVP, 3-time NBA MVP, 12-time All-Star, 9-time First-Team All-NBA, 1980 NBA All-Rookie First Team, 4-time NBA Assist Leader, 7-time Steals Leader. Now, that's Magic. We don't have to have any more discussion about Magic. He's pretty much already there. He is a personification of LA. Sandy Koufax, okay? A lot of people consider him the greatest pitcher of all time. Okay? 7-time All-Star, 4-time World Series champion, 1963 National League MVP, 3-time Cy Young Award winner, 2-time World Series champ, 2-time World Series Most Valuable Player, 3-time pitching Triple Crown winner, 3-time National League wins leader, 5-time National League ERA leader, 4-time strikeout leader. He pitched a perfect game on September 9th, 1965. He pitched 4 no-hitters in his career. He pitched at least 1 no-hitter every year between 1962 and 1965. But he didn't become an all-star pitcher until his 7th season in the league, and he only pitched for 11 seasons. So basically, everything that I told you about Sandy Koufax was essentially done in a space of 6 years.
Well, honestly, based on everything you just outlined, I have no argument with that. I have zero argument with that. I really don't. I mean,
he had like
I
the most,
Kobe,
and if it
but,
wasn't, and the thing about Sandy Koufax was he didn't become a good pitcher until the team had moved to Los Angeles. And it wasn't until a bullpen catcher named Norm Sherry told him, dude, you don't have to throw so hard to get people out. And once he realized that, he became dominant because he pretty much he basically ruined his arm before he learned how to pitch because he threw really hard. And once he realized that you don't have to throw so hard, something just clicked and nobody could get him out. And what was so funny is that if you watch his pitching in his career, he tipped his pitches. You knew what was coming because there was a certain way that he would stand when he threw a curveball. And there's another different way he would stand when he threw a fastball. And nobody could hit either one, which is crazy.
You can't go against that, man. You can't argue any of that, man. No, you can't argue any of that stuff, man. You really can't.
The other two, John Wooden, the Wizard of Westwood, 10 national championships in 12 years, 81-game winning streak, 38 consecutive wins in the NCAA tournament, 12 Final Four appearances, 15 Pac-12 tournament championships, 1972 Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year, 5-time AP Coach of the Year, 5-time National Association of Basketball Coaches Coach of the Year, and 6-time UPI Coach of the Year. And to round out the Mount Rushmore, the voice of the Dodgers, welcome to Dodger Baseball, Vin Scully, LA Dodgers play-by-play guy from 1950 to 2016. He broadcast baseball, he did football, and the PGA Tour. For CBS Sports, he broadcast for CBS. I did not know this until like a few years ago, that the famous game between the 1981 NFC Championship game, Dallas and San Francisco, the CBS play-by-play team was not John Madden and Pat Summerall. It was Vin Scully and Hank Stram calling the game for CBS.
Wow.
I did not know that until like a few years ago.
Me neither.
And if you listen to it, it's like, Hank Stram's voice. That's unmistakable. And then I was like, okay, who's that other guy? And it's Vin Scully. And I'm like, he did football? And that was interesting to me. And for NBC Sports, of course, he was the voice of the NBC Game of the Week. From 1983 to 1989, he called the very famous 1986 World Series when the ball went between Buckner's legs and stuff. But that's for Los Angeles, my Mount Rushmore, Vin Scully, John Wooden, Sandy Koufax, and Irvin Magic Johnson.
Before I move on, very underrated call by Vin Scully was Game 6 of the 1985 LCS when Jack Clark with yards.
Yeah.
He hit it and it looked like it was a pop-up. He said, the ball is going, and this ball is gone. And then look at him take all day around the bases because, they had been throwing at each other. Jack Clark took his time running around the base. Then the entire dugout came out to greet him at home plate when they closed the Dodgers out to advance to the World Series, in which, even though I'm a Cub fan, they were blatantly cheated in Game 6 against the Royals. Just blatantly, But,
the Don Dinkinger call. The Don Dinkinger blown call at first base. Exactly.
They were blatantly cheated. And you remember the ump wasn't calling any strikes for Joaquin Andahar. He was like, man, what do I got to do to get a strike call, man? But anyway, moving on from LA greatness, love Vin Scully. Moving on, we're going to move on from LA to New York City.
All right.
We're going to New York. Okay. These are the following people that I had for consideration. I had Patrick Ewing, Bill Parcells. I had Willis Reed. That was pretty much it. Pretty much, Reggie Jackson had some very brief consideration too, as well as Mickey Mantle and Lou Gehrig, but I kind of I didn't consider them as hard. I quickly dismissed them. So I settled on these four. Pretty much, I think you'll probably be in agreement with these. Maybe, I think you will agree with at least three of these.
Okay.
Number one, Walt Clyde Frazier. We talked about him at length a couple of months back during NBA Finals time. Hall of Fame, 7-time All-Star, 2-time NBA champ, 6-time All-NBA, 7-time All-Defense, All-Rookie, 1975 All-Star Game MVP, and he was a member of both the 50th and 75th anniversary teams. He averaged 18.9, 5.9 boards, 6.1 assists. Just the baller. And then we talked about how he went haywire in the Willis Reed game 7 against the Lakers and all of that. And then just off the court, the cultural representation.
Oh my God, yes.
The way he used to dress, the fly trench coats, the fly hats, the fly suits. He was rolling in the Rolls Royce in the 70s. See, like a lot of these cats, they flossing now, man, Clyde, like, man, I was doing that 50 years ago. Catch up, fellas.
And then plus he had a shoe deal. He was like one of the first people to actually have a shoe deal with Puma.
Mm-hmm. And he has his own restaurant. At least he did. I last went to New York a couple of years ago, and he had a bar. He had a bar, I think, off of 42nd Street, right around the corner from Times Square. But he had a restaurant, just quintessential representation of New York, not only from an accomplishment standpoint, but also a cultural representation standpoint as well.
Okay.
And the second one, best defensive player of all time, bar none, not even close. LT, Lawrence Taylor, and I'm not talking about LaDainian Tomlinson, the real LT, Lawrence Taylor. Hall of Fame, 10-time Pro Bowl, 8-time first team All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champion, 1986 MVP, member of the All-80s teams, 1981 Defensive Player of the Year, 1986 Sporting News Player of the Year, 3-time AP Defensive Player of the Year, 3-time UPI Defensive Player of the Year.
Right.
Like 142 sacks, man. And he totally revolutionized the linebacker position as well as offensive pass protection concepts. Because when he came into the league, it was typical custom for the running back or the fullback to attempt to block the Russian linebacker all the way from the outside. But he was just so dominant that quickly they had to draw there up. It was either the running back and then sometimes the tight end. But he quickly annihilated that, which forced offensive coordinators and coaches to kind of change up the way that they did things offensively as well as pass scheme protection wise. And that's that became the emphasis of the left tackle and all
Right.
of that. And that's still prevalent today, where the left tackle is probably the most responsible for pass protection, especially in terms of protecting the quarterback's blind side, being that most quarterbacks are going to be right-handed more times than not. So we got LT and all of that, and then his off the field stories are just, his off the field legends able to have this type of production while he was doing everything he was doing off the field is amazing. Then third, El Capitan, Derek Jeter. That's who we got. He's another guy that's the representation of New York, the quintessential superstar representation, professional, gets it done on the field, wins on the field, but also he does it off the field as well. Always looking smooth, always well dressed, always dressed to have the best women and all of that. And kind of the embodiment of what Ric Flair says. None of you can be first, but you can all be next. And then you also notice that despite all of the women that he's dated through the years, his game is airtight. It's like Mariah Carey, guys like that. You never hear bad things about him, or you never see pictures about.
I mean, the only bad thing you ever heard about Derek Jeter was his time as general manager of the Marlins.
Yeah,
and it is what it is.
So it's not his fault. He won 5. They garbage, man. So
right.
what he's supposed to?
Well, not right now. They're second place in the National League East right now. So
okay,
it happens, but.
Okay.
But again, I'm just pointing it out, just putting it in context.
But this brother,
just put it in context.
Hall of Fame, Rookie of the Year, 14-time All-Star, then 5-time World Series, 5-time Gold Glove, 5-time Silver Slugger, World Series MVP, All-Star Game MVP, the Roberto Clemente award, a member of the 3,000 hit club, nearly 3,500 hits with 3,465, 310 lifetime batting average, 260 home runs, 358 stolen bases, on base percentage 377. Man, just nearly 2,000 runs with 1,923. El Capitan. That's my third man.
Okay.
And then you want to interject before I go to the 4?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Number 4. I went long and hard about this, but I went ahead and include him. The Sultan SWAT. Babe Ruth. I got the Babe. That's right, the Babe. Hall of Fame, MVP, 2-time All-Star, 7 times World Series. For the longest time, the all-time home run leader. But then in addition to that, dude won the ERA title on the mound, man. Just the dog, just 714 homers, 342 batting average, 2,100 runs, 2,200 RBIs, 2,873 hits, 690 slugging percentage, man. On base percentage, 474, nearly 500. Just a dog. Now, we talk about it here on the Historically Speaking Sports podcast. One of my takeaways, which was no fault of his, he didn't play in an integrated league, but that's not his fault.
That's not his fault.
What I mean? That's not his fault. So the Babe. So that's my list. Any dissensions?
Well, I have 2. Okay. I can't, like I said, right before we started, I just off the top of my head came up with I did your cities, and I just put down 4 names for each one. Okay, that in my opinion, when I think of New York, I think of these players. You got 2 of the 4. Okay, I did have Lawrence Taylor, and I did have Babe Ruth. I did not have Clyde Frazier, but I did have Patrick Ewing.
No.
Okay, I did have Patrick Ewing. Okay, then you came up with Clyde Frazier, and I'm like, you know what? Okay, I give you that one. Derek Jeter, I give you that. Okay, but and I take Derek Jeter over the person that I did have. Okay, and he also is a lot like Clyde Frazier, was the personification of New York during the time he played. And I'm talking about none other than Broadway Joe Namath. Now, his playing skills, okay. Joe Namath in his career was like 3-27 in his career against teams with winning records. Okay. But he was the first quarterback to have swagger. Whether it was due or undue, I put him on the list because he made the quarterback position cool with the fur coat, the white shoes, the glasses, he made the quarterback position cool. And he brought a certain type of swagger that the quarterback position now has, but never had prior to him. Now, do I take him over Derek Jeter? Not in your life. But I just wanted to at least mention Broadway Joe.
Can understand that. And I gave a brief look at Broadway Joe, but I quickly dismissed him because when you look at his overall body of work,
that's not much
like
there.
It kind of looked like he got lucky once. And it wasn't, and I know he called his own shot and he won the game and all of that, giving some credence to the AFL, and it really gave some, eventually led to the merger, or where they merged at that time. I'm not sure.
It was the merger it gave the AFL credibility. The
Correct.
merger had already happened, but a lot of people were saying that it was going to take years, even decades, before a team from the AFL could even compete with the NFL. And as it turned out, teams from the AFL won the third and fourth Super Bowl heading into the merger in 1970. So he gave a lot of credence to the AFL, but he only won 3 games in his career against teams with winning records.
But I saw one stat and I quickly turned the page on him. And I understand this was a running era and they used to throw the ball downfield a lot. So due to that, I ignored the 50.1% completion percentage. I ignored that. But what I cannot overlook is the 173 touchdowns, the 220 interceptions. I cannot overlook that. So when I saw that, that's not fair. His fumble. That's not counting his fumble. You know what I mean? So you got to consider, okay, what is that? 220? That is minus 47, right? No, 57. 47. 47. Giveaway, takeaway. That's just counting interceptions. You throw in the fumbles, what you got to figure? Probably another 30 fumbles at least. You know? Come on, man. No. I dismissed him. And then I know he had a lot of swag and all of that. But nothing makes swagger look good. Then you still got to be the part. You notice all the guys I got with the swag, right?
Yeah.
I had Dusty Rhodes. I got LT. I got Ric Flair. I got Deion Sanders. What do all these guys have in common?
They got rings.
Got a lot of swagger and they got a lot of mouth, but they back it up. They produce. Yeah. You know what I mean? So therefore, with that, it's like, okay, nice coat, but how about not throwing the ball away today? How about that? You know what I mean? So no Joe Namath. So that concludes my Mount Rushmore for New York City. So what city are you going to cover next?
Next, I am going to go to the Motor City. I'm going to the city of Detroit. And this one right here for me was, I had this one done in like 15 seconds. I had this done. Okay. You got, in my opinion, 4 no-brainers.
Okay.
Just 4 no-brainers. And a couple, one of the no-brainers has to be at least kind of discussed. Okay. For the city of Detroit, Barry Sanders, Isaiah Thomas, Ty Cobb, and Gordie Howe. Okay, now, let's start with Mr. Tyrus Raymond Cobb. And I have to say this, okay. Was Ty Cobb a racist? Yes. But so was a lot of people in 1909. Okay. Ty Cobb over the years have gotten what he did and some of the things that he's been accused of doing, you could actually see. But some of it may have been overblown, And there was some things that he did that was like really heinous and really disgusting as far as like from a racial standpoint. But at the same time, you got to look at it like, okay, did it actually really happen that way? You know, now on his field exploits, Ty Cobb, 1911 AL MVP, 1909 Triple Crown winner, 12-time AL batting champ, 1909 home run champion, 4-time AL RBI leader, 6-time AL stolen base leader. Now, Ty Cobb, if you took all of this stuff aside and you just concentrate on everything that he had done on the field, a lot of people would be considering him the greatest player who ever lived. Okay, because some of the things that he has done on the field, hitting wise, we would not see again until maybe Ichiro. Okay, as far as like the stolen bases, the hits, and everything. Pete Rose, maybe, as far as like his overall will and his overall intensity to play the game, we wouldn't see that again until Pete Rose. But with Ty Cobb, a lot of the stories that you heard about him, and especially if you ever seen the Ken Burns documentary of baseball, a lot of the things that they said about Ty Cobb was flat out false and overblown, and actually, in some cases, way overblown and exaggerated. Like, for example, the famous story from the 1909 World Series when he supposedly had got on first base and the shortstop for Pittsburgh, Honus Wagner, future Hall of Famer, basically they both were charter members of the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1936, I think it was. And supposedly, according to the story, Ty Cobb essentially said, "Hey, Crowdhead, I'm coming over and I'm going to cut you to pieces." And Honus Wagner said, "Come on, I'm right here, come on." Next pitch he goes. And he's called out he's called out for the stolen base attempt. Honus Wagner hits him in the mouth, splits open his lip, and loses a couple of teeth. Sound like a good story, right? Never happened. And there's documented evidence. If you look back at the box score of the World Series from 1909, that situation came up once. And Cobb got to first base on a throwing error. Okay? Which means that it could not have possibly happened that way. So, all of that to say that over the years, Ty Cobb, who was racist, okay, but I think that his story had been sullied over time because a lot of people just didn't like him. And if you've ever seen that movie Cobb with Tommy Lee Jones playing Cobb, that has been so way overblown that some stuff that I've read about Ty Cobb, some of it was true, but a lot of it was overblown.
Okay, well, I'll take that into consideration. But now you mentioned one thing earlier that really sent my antennas up. You said he could arguably be the best player ever, right?
Yeah.
You can't be the best player ever with 117 home runs. Next. You know what I mean? So
but you got to look at yeah, you're right.
You know,
but at the same time, you got to look at the era where he played. You know, they weren't hitting home runs at that time. They just weren't. But statistically, if you account for the way the game was played back then and the stats that he put up, he could be considered statistically one of the greatest of all time.
Well, he's one of the greatest, but the great ones are always ahead of their time. The great ones have the ability, even though things are customarily done one way, the great ones come in and rewrite the way things are done. Like, you know, like LT, for example, you know,
Michael
Muhammad
Jordan.
Ali, Jordan, we redo things. You remember when Jordan came in the league, the focal point of the offense traditionally had always been the center. And had always been the center, you know, pretty much point guard, small forward, center, with the center getting the lion's share of the offensive focus. But then Jordan changed all of that, right? But even with Ty Cobb, you know how I am, man. Look, I don't care if he races or not. If he can, like we on the court, if he can do his job and all of that, who cares? I ain't got to go to dinner with the dude. You know what I mean?
All
don't,
right.
Don't jump stupid with me, because if you jump stupid with me, it's going to be a serious problem. But if you do your job, you don't have to like me. Do your
Right.
job. As long as we're winning games, you're cool. Now, with your Detroit, I have 3 of the 4 right, and I know you got to go into Gordie Howe. And I don't know anything about hockey, but the same question that you posed to me for Atlanta, how in the world is Tommy Hearns not on the list?
Well, Tommy
Instead of
Hearns was
Gordie
under
Howe.
consideration. Now, Tommy Hearns was under my consideration. Thomas Hearns was under consideration with Bobby Lane, Steve Yzerman, Al Kaline, and Dave Bing. Okay, Thomas Hearns was under real deep consideration at the Motor City Hitman, the Motor City Cobra, I should say. But Gordie Howe for the city of Detroit, the man played. Now let me get to his page. Okay, Gordie Howe. His hockey career spans from 1946 to 1980. 1946 to 1980. Played his first game with the Detroit Red Wings in 1946. It ended with 1980 with the Hartford Whalers. Okay. Played pro hockey in 5 different decades. Red Wings, and also played for the Houston Aeros of the AHL and then the Hartford Whalers. 4-time Stanley Cup champion, 12-time NHL first team, 23-time NHL All-Star, 6-time NHL most valuable player, the winner of the Hart Trophy, 5-time NHL scoring leader, 6-time points leader, which is the Art Ross Trophy. He is known as Mr. Hockey. And he is essentially the greatest hockey player Detroit has ever seen. Okay. And I couldn't put him ahead of Howe. I couldn't put him ahead of Cobb. I couldn't, in good faith, even though how I feel about Isaiah Thomas, I couldn't put him ahead of Isaiah Thomas. 2-time NBA champion, 1990 Finals MVP, 12-time NBA All-Star, 12-time NBA All-Star MVP. 3-time NBA first team, and the 1985 assist leader. And I sure as heck could not put Thomas Hearns ahead of Barry Sanders. 1997 NFL MVP, 2-time NFL Offensive Player of the Year, 1989 Offensive Rookie of the Year, 6-time First Team All-Pro, 10-time Pro Bowler, 4-time NFL rushing champ, 99 rushing touchdowns in his career, 10 receiving touchdowns, 15,269 yards rushing. And you think of Barry Sanders, the one play that pops into my head was the NFC divisional playoff game against the Cowboys in 1991, where the entire team had a shot at Barry Sanders and he made all of them miss.
Okay. And the one game that pops up for Barry Sanders to me is the following wild card game the following year in Green Bay when he had -1 yard.
1 yard rushing.
You know what I mean? So that's the one that, like I mentioned in my all-time NFL team episode. The brother can give me 80 yards, but he can't get me 1 yard when I absolutely got to have 1 yard. But he should be on the list. Now, Gordie Howe sound like he was a dog. I don't know a lot about hockey, but he played 5 decades, so what? You don't get credit for showing up. It's what you do once you get there. I don't care about, you remember when we were in school, when we were in elementary school, it was plenty of dudes who had perfect attendance, but they had F's across the board. You show up every day, but you don't do anything once you get there. What difference it makes?
But here's the thing, Chuck. Yeah, he showed up, but he was Mr. Hockey. And for the longest time, he had the record for the most goals scored in NHL history.
Okay.
And the thing is, the way hockey does things is that when he retired from the Red Wings in 1971, he retired, okay? He came back in a totally different league and dominated that league in the 70s. You know what I mean?
Was it as good as the NHL?
The WHA, or like 4 teams from the WHA joined the NHL. Okay.
Okay. All right. That sounds good there.
So he was still putting in work when he was well into his 40s. He was still putting in work. So,
Okay.
and he's known as Mr. Hockey. He is great? I mean, he's up there top 5 all-time greatest hockey players of all time.
Well, I can give you that then.
You know,
Okay.
now Thomas Hearns, like I said, Thomas Hearns was a serious consideration for this. You know, probably the most serious out of all the other ones that I had under consideration for Detroit. Bobby Lane, Steve Yzerman, Al Kaline, and Dave Bing. You know, he was up there. He was like at the top of the list as far as like under consideration that just barely missed.
Okay. Okay. I can give you that. The only other question I have for you is, were any Detroit Tigers up for even minimal consideration on your
But
list?
Al Kaline.
Okay.
Al Kaline.
Okay.
Al Kaline was, you know, Ty Cobb played for the Tigers forever, and so did Al Kaline. Al
Okay.
Kaline played from the early 1950s to the mid 70s with the Tigers. So he was a long time Tiger, but you know, Ty Cobb, Al Kaline, you know, they really didn't have a lot of really like well-known, like transcendent players for the Tigers. A lot of really good players, Lou Whitaker, you know, um,
Trammell,
Alan Trammell,
Lance
Willie
Parrish,
Horton, Lance Parrish, Denny
Chet Lemon.
McClain, you know, those guys, you know,
Yeah.
but none of them that really
Stuck out.
transcended the city of Detroit, you
Yeah.
know. But and
Yeah.
that's just kind of like the way the city of Detroit is, you know. It's like you have a lot of really good players, but none, you know, outside of Barry Sanders maybe and Isaiah Thomas maybe, that really captures the imagination of fans, not only that are not based in Detroit but based in other places.
Okay.
And that's
I
just the
can give you
way
that.
Detroit is.
I can give you that. Okay. So I'll shift my gears over to the city of Miami.
All
My
right.
my Mount Rushmore is as follows. Number one, obvious, no brainer to me. I think you will agree with three of these, and you may have um questions with the fourth. So before I start,
Okay.
it wasn't a lot of people I had for consideration because I briefly considered Alexis Arguello because
Okay.
even though he was from Nicaragua, he kind of fought out of Miami while he was in the States. But I quickly, despite as great as he was, he's arguably definitely one of the top 5 lightweights ever in the sport of boxing. I didn't consider him. And then, man, that was pretty much it because like a lot of the Dolphins, even though they were a great team, you know, kind of similarly to what you just outlined with the Tigers, they were a bunch of good players that made a great team. Kind
Yeah.
of. Not necessarily that one stand. Like Larry Zonka was good, Mercury Morris was good. Bob Greasy was all right. You know,
Yeah.
then overall they were just they were a bunch of good players, but were extremely well coached. So as a result of that, they were a great team. So
Right.
anyway, number one, no brainer, Dan Marino. Dangerous Dan Marino. No brainer. 9-time Pro Bowl, 3-time first team All Pro, 84 MVP, 1984 AP Offensive Player of the Year. He won the Burt Vale Award. Then he was 2-time UPA Offensive Player of the Year. He was 1983 Rookie of the Year. You know, he made Super Bowl 19. What was that? His second season. He
Yes.
replaced David. He replaced David Woodley. What an upgrade! But
Yeah.
he replaced David Woodley, but lost to Roger Craig in the Niners. I don't think Jerry Rice wasn't there yet.
No, he
No,
wasn't.
he wasn't there yet. But he lost to them, and people thought, okay, it's his second year. Lost to the 49ers. This will be the first of many trips to the Super Bowl. That was his only trip to the
That was
Super
the only
Bowl,
one.
which is crazy. But, you know, threw for 5,084 yards in 1984. 59.4 completion percentage, 61,000 yards passing, 420 touchdowns, 252 interceptions. And his quarterback record, you know, despite many of the times they had solid teams, but they were good because of him.
Yeah.
147, 93, and 0. And could you imagine if he played under these rules with a 17th game? With a 17th game on top of that.
Right.
Would you we're thinking probably 6,500 yards, probably.
Yeah.
Or close. You can throw it 50 times a game, no problem.
I mean, yes. I mean, especially if you're throwing the ball to Mark Duper, Mark Clayton, Jimmy Cephalo, Dan Johnson, those guys. If you're throwing it to those guys, of course, yeah, you're gonna get a lot of, Tony Nathan,
Yes. Yes. But it was just insane because you got to figure the dude went for 5,085 yards, and the passing game concept are not nearly as complex schematically as they are now, as well as these were the days when the defenses could pretty much play totally uninhibited and unimpeded. Whereas nowadays you can definitely argue for sure that defenses play with one hand tied behind their back. But you can arguably argue that perhaps they play at times with both hands tied behind
their back. Right.
So
and plus he played at a time where there was only like a handful of quarterbacks that threw for 4,000 yards. Dan Fouts was one of them. Warren Moon. These guys were throwing for 4,000 yards, and they were making headlines when they did that.
Yes.
And then Dan Marino comes out there and throws for 5,000. Man, that's ridiculous. And that 1984 Dolphins team is, to me, right up there like one of the greatest teams that never won a Super Bowl. The 84 Dolphins, 85 Dolphins team were like two of the best teams that Dan Marino ever played for. That never wanted that. The 85, they didn't even go to the Super Bowl. They lost in the championship game to the Patriots. In 84, he put up these ridiculous numbers. First quarterback to throw over 40 touchdown passes in a season. That was ridiculous. And that was this was a Don Shula coach team that was doing this, and it was there was a total sea change for anything that Shula was known for. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Now, quick question for you before I move on to the next person. You mentioned 1985. They gave the Bears their only loss of the year in that Monday night game because they kind of were a couple of years ahead of their time in their approach in terms of attacking the Bears 46 defense, where as opposed to deep drop backs and long developing plays, which gave the 46 front plenty of time to put plenty of pressure and havoc on the quarterback, they were using quick drops, quick throws into the flats, forcing the linebackers and the safeties to cover. And they gave them all kind of problems in that game, as well as it was their night, because I remember they had a touchdown on a tip ball that night. If they made Super Bowl 20, would they have been a formidable challenge, or do you think the Bears would have made the necessary adjustments?
I think that it would have been, first of all, it would have been a heck of a lot better game than what the Patriots did. Yes. It would have been a better game. Would they have been able to beat the Bears? No, because you had Buddy Ryan running that defense, and he would have been able to figure out how to stop that offense. Okay. How to beat the 46 defense, they showed everybody how to beat it. And to beat the 46 defense, you got to take the derivative of the West Coast offense. Quick, 3-step drop, 1-step drop, 3-step drop, and get the ball out of your hands. Okay. And have the receiver basically make every pass play basically like a run play. Okay. The receiving, because everybody's coming, you got to get the ball out. And then have something called yards after catch. Throw it over to Clayton. He turns a 3-yard, like a 5-yard out into like a 27-yard run. You know what I mean? And that's how you beat the 46 defense, is timing, precision, and quickness with the ball coming out of the quarterback's hand. And who had a quicker release than Dan Marino? Nobody did.
you got to figure with Tony Nathan, I would have liked the matchup.
Oh my God, Tony
against
Nathan.
Gary
Oh my
Fensick
God.
and Dave Dearson. I would have loved. I'm sure Don Shula and Marino would have loved that matchup going into the game, pretty much.
Because Tony Nathan was another receiver coming out of the backfield, and
correct.
not to you can't forget the ageless wonder himself, Nat Moore.
Oh, Mr. Third Down boy. He could really get it done on third down, man. Yes, sir. He could really get it done on third down. But
so you got Dan Marino as number one. I think I mentioned one of your guys, and if he's not on the Miami list, then something's wrong.
I'm trying to remember what you mentioned, but we'll see in a second. Number 2, Dwayne Wade. No doubt about it. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. Mr. Miami Heat, Hall of Fame, 13-time All-Star, 2008, 2009 scoring champion, 3-time NBA champion, won a ring without LeBron, won a ring before LeBron.
Yes, you
understand?
Did.
In which he was Finals MVP, one of the greatest Finals MVP performances of all time. I think he averaged something like 36 a game in that series. They just couldn't stop him. 8-time All NBA, complete player, 3-time All D, and he had a penchant for blocking shots from that 2-guard position. He was all rookie team, the aforementioned Finals MVP, All-Star Game MVP, member of the 75th anniversary team, and deservedly so. And I think he got at least one gold medal on the Redeem team in 2008.
Yes, he did.
Yes. And he averaged 22 a game for his career, 4.7 rebounds, 5.4 assists, and played very well. One of the most iconic players of his time, perhaps the most notable Miami Heat, because I think he even supersedes Alonzo Mourning in that regard, as far as in Heat lore and all of that. So just a tremendous player there. Okay, number 3, none other than the coach, Don Shula. That's number 3. Hall of Fame coach, 2-time Super Bowl champ, both with the Baltimore Colts. 4-time AP Coach of the Year, 4-time Sporting News Coach of the Year, 3-time PFWA Coach of the Year, and 3-time UPI Coach of the Year. Wound up with 328 wins, which I know were the most for the longest time. I don't know if that record has been eclipsed yet or not. I don't think it.
I'm not sure on that. And if anybody was going to eclipse it, it might have been Belichick.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking in terms of Belichick.
I think Shula still has the record. I think Shula still has the record, overall record, playoffs and stuff included.
Mm-hmm. So the great Don Shula, great coach. Just synonymous with the Miami Dolphins, and that's crazy. He's had 2 careers where he kind of was similar with the Baltimore Colts, but then he went on to the Miami Dolphins, and he's pretty much notable. As when you think of Don Shula, unbelievably, you think Dolphins.
You think of the Dolphins, right?
And he coached there much longer, so that makes sense. But still, number 4 may be controversial, but like I mentioned, it wasn't a lot to pick from for here. It wasn't a lot to pick from because you look at the Dolphins, other than Marino, not a lot. Outside of Dwayne Wade, not a lot. Don Shula. You could say Pat Riley, but I think Pat Riley, I think Los Angeles Lakers. I think Pat Riley. Even though he's been with the Heat a very long time, he's still more synonymous with the Lakers than the Heat for me. So this guy, Jimmy Johnson, head coach of the Miami Hurricanes. That's what I got. Because, they had won the title. I picked him because of this. Because you remember they beat Nebraska in 83 under Howard Schnellenberger and all of that. But then, it seemed like that was going to be a one-off. But then Jimmy came in after that and built the program to the U that they ultimately became, and the perennial dominance and the prominence of the program.
Right.
Hence why I have him on this Mount Rushmore. Won the national title with the Hurricanes, won 2 Super Bowls with the Cowboys, of course. He was coach of Miami from 1984 through 1988, and he is a member of both. He's one of, how many coaches? I think he may be the only one to win a college. Barry Switzer did too. But
a national championship and a
Super Bowl.
And Pete Carroll.
And Pete Carroll. Yes. but he's a member of the College Football Hall of Fame and NFL Hall of Fame as well. So I went with Jimmy Johnson. I thought very briefly about Michael Irvin, but when you think about Irvin, despite his Hurricane ties, he still ring more Dallas
the
Cowboys to
Cowboys,
me
yeah.
than Miami Hurricanes. So, and it's kind of like a lack of options. Therefore, Jimmy Johnson is the pick.
Well, to be honest with you, I had somebody else
Okay.
and totally forgot about Jimmy Johnson. And Jimmy Johnson is a better fit because of everything that he's done for the University of Miami. And you said it right. Snellenberger set the groundwork and he laid the foundation for the U, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Jimmy Johnson built the house as the U,
Yes, he did.
And other guy that came along, Dennis Erickson
He maintained.
and Coker, they were the ones to maintain it.
Yes.
But Jimmy Johnson built the U. He built it. Snellenberger laid the foundation, but Jimmy Johnson built the house. I had Larry Zonka, which he was he was the first Dolphin superstar. Greasy was okay, but he wasn't the main star of the Dolphins. It wasn't anybody on the defense because they were the no-name defense. Nobody really knew who they were. They were just good, other than maybe Nick Bonaconti. But Zonka was the Miami Dolphins offense in the early 70s. Him, Morris, Kick. You considered Paul Warfield, but Paul Warfield had made a name for himself already in Cleveland, and he kind of brought that star with him to Miami. So, but as far as like truly identifying with the Miami Dolphins, it was Larry Zonka. But Jimmy Johnson, what he did for the University of Miami pretty much overshadows what anything what Larry Zonka did with the Dolphins, in my opinion.
Okay. So we agree there. So
Okay.
We've put Miami to bed. Where are you going next?
Where I'm going next is probably the hardest one I had to do. This one was harder than LA. And I'm talking about the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia. Now, before I get started, I'm just letting you know right now, this one was a headache and a half to do because there were so many people that to me embodies Philadelphia. And these are the people that I had under consideration but did not make the list. Connie Mack, Allen Iverson, Reggie White, Eric Lindros, Mike Schmidt, and Wilt Chamberlain. They were all under consideration, but I could not put them on the list. Not ahead of these guys. Okay, so that's serious. That's some serious. That's some serious people, right? But these are the people that I have for Philly. None other than the doctor, Julius Erving,
Yes.
Dr. J. The next one, Smoking Joe Frazier. Smoking Joe Frazier is part of my Mount Rushmore for Philadelphia. Next one of my personal favorites. The man they made a sign for him in the Spectrum during his heyday. Only God saves more than Bernie Perron, the longtime goalie for the Broad Street Bullies, Philadelphia Flyers of the mid-'70s. And to round out the list for the city of brotherly love, Concrete Charlie Bednarik, linebacker and center for the Philadelphia Eagles of the 50s and 60s. The last man to play both start on offense and defense in the NFL. So that's my list.
Okay.
Julius Erving, Joe Frazier, Bernie Perron, and Chuck Bednarik. Now, let me start with Bernie Perron first. Only God saves more than Bernie Perron. He was the goalie for the Broad Street Bullies, Philadelphia Flyers, back-to-back Stanley Cup champs of the mid-1970s. Stanley Cup champs in 74-75, five-time All-Star, elected to the Hall of Fame in 1984. His number one is retired by the Philadelphia Flyers. Just one of the the Broad Street Bullies during the 1970s was one of the roughest. They constantly got into fights. They intimidated teams, and you could not score on this man. And he is the personification of Philly toughness. All of these guys that I'm talking about embodies Philly in a certain way. Okay, and that is the reason why I decided to go with these four. Julius Irving, 1983 NBA champ, two-time ABA champion, two-time ABA playoff most valuable player, 11-time NBA All-Star, two-time NBA All-Star MVP, and five-time All-NBA first team. The doctor, that's obvious. When you think of basketball in Philly, you kind of think of Iverson, you kind of think of Wilt, but nobody comes even close to Dr. J. Nobody comes close. Then you got Joe Frazier, 32-4-1 overall, 27 knockouts in his career, undisputed heavyweight champ, and the WBA and WBC heavyweight champion, defeated Muhammad Ali in March of 1971, known as the Fight of the Century, or just simply The Fight. Earned the undisputed titles by beating Jimmy Ellis and the vacated WBA and WBC heavyweight titles while Muhammad Ali was suspended. Joe Frazier is the only one that really gave Ali some really, really serious, really three great, outstanding fights. You know, even though he was born in South Carolina, he is best known for coming out of the fighting city of Philadelphia. And he is on the Mount Rushmore of the city of brotherly love. That was the first person I put on the list as far as like Philly. In my opinion, he got on the list before Dr. J.
Great.
With Joe Frazier.
I appreciate that. I really do. I really do.
And then to round out the list in Philly, Chuck Bednarik. And I have to start with a story that I heard about Chuck Bednarik. Now, he was, again, like I said, the last player in the NFL to go both ways. He was the starting center for the Eagles and also the starting middle linebacker, which means you're getting hit every play. Okay, and to go both ways. Okay, there was this one story I heard from Tom Brookshire, former teammate and former CBS analyst on the NFL. One time they were playing a game, and he comes off the field, and his bicep was torn in half, okay? And it was hanging off of his arm, okay? So he comes up and he goes to the trainer. He pushes the bicep together at the top of the bone. He pushes it together with his underarm, and he says, put a piece of tape right here. The trainer puts the piece of tape, wraps it up, and then goes back into the game and finishes the game with a torn bicep.
Dog. Just
okay.
a dog.
I mean, 14-year NFL career, last two-way player, played center on offense, linebacker on defense, 1967 Hall of Famer, two-time NFL champion, 10-time first-team All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowl selection, part of the 1950s All-Decade team, selected for his overall toughness in Philly, and he also had 21 fumble recoveries.
Wow.
So that's my list for the city of brotherly love. Julius Irving, Joe Frazier, Bernie Perron, and Chuck Bednarik.
Okay. Not bad, but I personally had Doc, Mike Schmidt, Joe Frazier, and Reggie White. That was my list.
Yeah.
And I'm happy you put Joe Frazier on there, man, because he's first of all, he's very underrated.
Yes.
Overall, but criminally underrated within the confines of the city of brotherly love itself.
Yeah.
Now,
okay.
I'm a huge fan of boxing, and a huge catalyst of developing love for boxing are the Rocky movies, of course.
Yeah.
Now obviously they're hyperbolic versions of the actual sport.
Yeah.
But you have to do that for entertainment's sake.
Uh-huh.
But for years and years, they were using a fictitious character as the embodiment of the city of brotherly love fighting spirit, when they had the actual real life embodiment right there, and they within the last 10 to 15 years, they righted that wrong by giving him his own statue, but that was
Right.
long overdue. And then Mike Schmidt, enough said. We said a
Yeah,
lot about
yeah.
him
I mean,
in
again,
our
he
episode.
was on my list, and I kept going back and forth with Mike Schmidt and Wilt Chamberlain and stuff like that. I kept going back and forth with all of them, and Reggie White. I again kept going back and forth with them, but I was like, you know what, Reggie, he played a long time for the Eagles, but he won the Super Bowl with Green Bay. Okay.
Yeah.
Mike Schmidt, the greatest in my lifetime, still the greatest Phillies player ever. But I don't think he rises because when the Phillies won it in 1980, it was early part of his career, but he was still one of the key cogs in that team with Tug McGraw and and that group. And he was the star of the team. But I don't think that he's like rose to the occasion or rose or was transcended in Philly like these guys were. Great player, awesome player. But I'm looking for somebody that kind of is transcendent entities or when you think of that city, you think of these players. And he slightly falls short for me.
Okay. And you got the doctor. He's everything, man. The style and grace on the court that parallels with the style and grace off
the court,
man.
right?
Best afro of all time, and just kind of like really the first modern day superstar in terms of fanfare beyond the sport. Because you remember, like he, like a lot of things like Michael Jordan in Space Jam, LeBron James in Space Jam 2. I think I've never seen that one. I've never seen the Jordan one either, but the soundtrack for the first Space Jam, D'Angelo and Seal and whoa, Manny Feet. The
soundtrack is better than the movie.
Yeah, the soundtrack. But Doc did that way back in the 70s with the fish that saved
Pittsburgh. Yep.
He did that way back in the 70s. Moses Guthrie. You understand? And I still remember when what's that woman name? She was on she was Mr. She was on The Color Purple. What was that woman name?
Oh gosh.
Mr. was in love with her over Celia, but she was in the street that fish that saved Pittsburgh, and I still remember.
That scene when Doc is playing on the playground and stuff that.
Doc got on the Stacey Adams, the drop top sitting beside the court, and Doc had on the V-neck sweater with the cuff-link shirt underneath, and Doc say you could do a lot scoring twos, baby, and Doc was going through there blapping with his full suit on, and just one of the coldest scenes. One of the coldest scenes ever, man. So, great list, man. Great list.
Okay, so where you going next? Your turn is up, and we got.
I am going.
I got two cities. I think I got one city left. You got two cities left.
I got two cities left. I'm going to San Francisco.
Okay.
All right. I think all four of these are no-brainers. One of them may be controversial, but I don't care. Number one. He just goes by one name, no one name only. And everyone knows who you're talking about. Joe.
Yep.
Just Joe. Joe Montana, man. Hall of Fame, 8-time Pro Bowl, three-time first-time All-Pro, four Super Bowl rings, 2-time MVP, 1989 MVP, 3-time Super Bowl MVP, never thrown an interception in a Super Bowl.
Right.
Hall of Fame, 1980s team, man. 1986 Comeback Player of the Year, 1989 UPI Offensive Player of the Year. Just old cool Joe, man. Just 117 and 47, 63.2 completion percentage, 40,551 yards, 273 touches, 139 INTs. Joe a penchant for leading his team down the field when they need it, like the drive that started the 49er dynasty.
Yep, the catch.
They're trailing the 49ers. I mean, they're trailing the Cowboys, Tom Landry, America's team by 6. And he just kept converting third down over third down including getting the catch with Dwight Clark just over the outstretched hands of Everson Walls, which sort of started two dynasties simultaneously. Because you remember, it not only started the 49er dynasty, but remember Chris Berman was there for ESPN, and they're running around on the field, and he was down on the field broadcasting.
That's right.
And that was kind of the first,
the beginning of
kind of the first,
like game day,
upswing.
the NFL prime time. That's kind of started it. You're right.
Yeah,
I didn't think about that. I never put those two together. But yeah, you're right.
That started the upswing, the cultural upswing of ESPN Network. That game and that image of Chris Berman being on the field, jovial, and all of the 49er fans all over the field jumping behind him and stuff. That kind of shot Chris Berman in the superstardom, and also ESPN Network rose with the tide. Then next, gotta have somebody to throw the ball to. Arguably the greatest offensive player, non-quarterback of all time, probably the greatest offensive player of all time, the incomparable Jerry Rice. The incomparable Jerry Rice, man.
Okay.
Hall of Fame, 13-time Pro Bowl, 10-time first-team All-Pro, 3-time Super Bowl champ, 1987 NEA MVP, 1987 PFWA MVP, Super Bowl 23 MVP. He's a member of the All-80s team. He's a member of the All-90s team. Two-time AP Player of the Year, two-time Sporting News Player of the Year, 1987 UPI Offensive Player of the Year, 1985 UPI Rookie of the Year. And he played in an era in which they didn't throw the ball a lot, but I feel pretty safe in saying 1,549 receptions, 22,895 yards, 197 touchdowns, caught for 1,200 at age 40. I just don't think it would be eclipsed. And imagine him now with these rules and a 17
Oh my gosh.
He caught for 1,800 back then. With 17 games, this dude would be catching for he could possibly go for 2,500 yards and 45 touchdowns in a season, depending on who his quarterback was.
Right.
Then let's switch over to the NBA. Since we're utilizing the Dubs for the purposes of this exercise, the Dubs are in San Francisco, even though they got their stripes and they're beloved in Oakland, especially by both of us. But for this, they're in San Francisco. None other than the chef, Steph Curry, man.
Yep.
Revolutionized the game. Now, whether that was to the good of the game or not, that's debatable. However, that's not his fault, because it's not his fault that everyone tries to be like him when there's only one him. So,
And with him, though, Chuck, it's like it is easier to emulate him than it is to emulate Michael Jordan.
Correct.
It's easier because he's shooting 3-pointers. Now, again, you asked, is it to the detriment of the game? Yes. Maybe. Maybe it is, because now everybody's become 3-point happy. Instead of just everybody plays from the outside in now, instead of the way that we would play, or way we were taught to play, inside out. You know what I mean? And he changed that, he changed the game. Now, whether history would basically determine whether that was a good thing or not, but one thing that you cannot argue is that he changed the game. He changed it.
And he is one of one.
Yes.
And like a lot of times, it was similar to what we just talked about with the San Francisco 49ers, right? In the middle of their dynasty. And then, of course, with the expansion of the Walsh tree, a lot of the assistants going on to become head coaches in other places, the West Coast principles and the West Coast offense began to spread throughout the league. Right. And with mixed success, some would be successful, but it would never be as successful as it's the originator, because the personnel, you got Montana, you got Jerry Rice, you got John Taylor on the other side, and you got Tom Rathman, you got Brent Jones, and you got the original all-purpose back in Roger Craig. Who else has that collective of talent. Of course,
Right.
the offense is going to be that dominant with that type of personnel.
And Bill
operating.
Walsh's imaginative West Coast offense, which, he perfected. He didn't invent it. He just perfected it.
Correct. And, and it's like a lot of these teams, they try to emulate the Warrior style of play, but they arguably have two of the top 5 shooters the top shooter and two of the top 5 shooters of all time, similar to the 49ers, who has that in their arsenal.
Okay,
so
exactly.
Of course it works for them, but everyone else doesn't have that. So it looks stupid. You know what I mean? It looks dumb. Just chucking it up and missing over and over again.
It is the actual personification of the old coaching saying, it's not about X's and O's, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes.
There you go. And just running down Steph right quick, transcendent superstar. Transcendent. 12-time. They're still trying to replace he and LeBron as far as superstars. The next star. They look like they finally found one in the French kid, but they still looking for someone to consistently place LeBron and he at the top of the NBA bill. But 12-time All-Star, 2-time scoring champ, unanimous MVP, 2016 Steals champ, 4 rings, 11-time All-NBA, All-Rookie, 2 MVPs, one of which was unanimous, 2-time All-Star Game MVP, 1-time Western Conference Final MVP, 1-time Finals MVP, and a member of the 75th anniversary team. And for his career, he's averaged 25 a game, 4.7 rebounds, 6.3 assists. And for his career, he is shooting 42% from 3, 91% from the line. Now, not getting too deep in the weeds here, it's really a conundrum because when you list point guards, they try to say he's the best point guard of all time. I don't think that that's even close because it's Magic. And even though he's technically a point guard, he's really not, and their system really don't have a point guard. It just
it's positionless basketball. That's what they play. It's positionless basketball.
Correct. So it's kind of hard, but he's one of the greatest to ever do it. Now, this final pick here is controversial. Will be controversial to some, not me. And none other than Barry Bonds, San Francisco Giants. He's the final pick. He's on Mount Rushmore. I don't care what anyone has to say, and I'll clarify that in just a moment.
Go ahead and say your pick because I got somebody. I don't have Barry Bonds. I got somebody else.
You don't got Barry Bonds?
Nope.
Does he play baseball?
Yes.
Man, come on, man. You tripping. Willie Mays, maybe?
Yes.
Damn. Good point.
That's who I have, Willie Mays.
Good point. Okay, well, I'm staying with Barry. We'll talk about Willie in a second. I was going to jump down your throat, but Willie Mays, I can't argue with Willie Mays. He's arguably the greatest player ever that's ever lived overall, pretty much. But Barry, 7-time MVP, 14-time All-Star, 8-time Gold Glove, 12-time Silver Slugger, 2-time batting title, 3 times Major League Player of the Year, 7-time MVP, Home Run Derby champ, and the current leader of the all-time the home run record in the regular season and overall with 73 and 762 respectively. And the brother also has 514 stolen bases, 298 batting average, right at 2,000 RBI with 1,996 to be exact. He also has scored 2,227 runs, 600 slugging percentage, and on-base percentage of 444. Now, I know what everybody is talking about. Steroids, right? Steroids, and more steroids. Okay. First of all, they were legal. Because baseball, we've gone through this kind of tongue-in-cheek a little bit, not exactly a lot. But if you piece together the episodes, you will get it. Baseball, we had the strike in 94. Then returning from the strike in 95, viewership was at an all-time low for the next couple of years. And then beginning in 98, you had the home run chase with Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa of the St. Louis Cardinals and the Chicago Cubs, and then that reignited the viewership, the fandom, not only TV ratings but also attendance as far as baseball, and then that wound up being on the upstream, and then they had baseball enjoyed a resurgence in popularity and viewership and fandom and revenue and all of that. Then once they've re-attained fan interest, now Bud Selig, he wants to play the moral police after he's made the money already.
Yeah.
And now he wants to come back and be like, well, this person should be in the Hall of Fame. This person shouldn't be, and all of that. It was legal at the time, I feel. And even without the steroid years, he was 500 homers, 500 steals before he shot one needle. He should be.
Right.
Now, from Barry's standpoint, right? As I shared with you a couple of weeks ago, right? Imagine if you're Barry Bonds. What? Before that, he was hitting typically, 35? He was a 30-30 guy.
Yeah.
About 35 homers, about 30 steals.
Right.
All around, high batting average, great glove, great fielder, and all of that.
Yeah.
Then you up and look. You see Brady Anderson hitting 50.
Yeah.
You see Brett Boone when he in Seattle, which is one of the hardest parks the hit in.
The Kingdom at the time. It wasn't Safeco. It was the Kingdom. Right?
Yeah, but he's going. No, I think one year he hit 50 in Safeco. He went the opposite way one time. Then you got people like, for instance, like for the Dodgers, Eric Gagne. Then you got pitchers that just imagine you facing pitchers that he owned. Probably 20 at bats. He got a 400 average with 9 homers. Now all of a sudden, same scrubs blowing him away 90, 98, 99, 100 up top. And he like, I know I'm better than these dudes. Something going wrong. So the steroids is enhancing all these guys. He like, well, I'm better than every last one of them. Imagine what I can do if I take them.
Right.
Hence 73 home run. You know what I mean? And all of that. So it's like, dude, he's sitting back watching all of these scrubs make money, get all these endorsement deals, get all of these big contracts like Brady Anderson. Didn't Manny Ramirez, even though he was good without him. I think Big Papi got caught once or under suspicion. He still made the Hall. Why? Because everybody likes Big Papi. And he can't even field. You know how I feel. Dude, you can't even play the field. I mean,
the only person, in my opinion, that you may disagree with me on this, the only person that, in my opinion, that's a truly DH that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame is Edgar Martinez.
There you go. Yes.
Because he could play some field. In the beginning of his career, he did play some field in Seattle. Okay. Yes. But Big Papi was a liability in the field when he played for the Twins.
Correct.
At first base. He was a liability. And that's why they traded him away to get Justin Morneau.
Correct. Then you got to factor this in, not talking about Barry, but just to give these two guys their kudos. Maddox and Pedro Martinez in the middle of all of this was going sub-2 ERA. In the middle of everybody.
In the middle of
everybody juicing, they were still going sub-2 ERA with
on just talent, on just pure talent.
With Pedro striking out 300.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, dude, it just, so how great are they with everyone juicing to still be going sub-2 ERA and everybody is juiced to the gills. So therefore, I think everybody gives Barry a hard time, but you got to imagine, like I said before, like people he knows he's better than are now outperforming him unfairly. And then on top of that, baseball, he was one of the stars. And then Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire, people like, I don't think Jeff Bagwell was on them or anything like that. But people like them were going past him in stardom at the top of the bill. So he like, man, what in the world going on? And all of that. Now, then the exact same people, they still want to recognize the Astros championship.
Right.
The Astros won. They cheated. It should be vacant. Mm-hmm. It should not be recognized. It should be vacant. And every last one of them should be ineligible for Hall of Fame consideration.
Right.
Because they're cheating in the middle of the game.
Right. And we may have to revisit this subject in a couple minutes, dealing with it, because I have Houston on my list. Okay.
Okay, but you said you disagreed. Willie Mays, arguably the greatest player ever.
Yeah.
No qualm with me from me about that. Fine, I
Right.
understand that.
I
What
mean, I
about the
mean,
other
off the
three
top of my
selections?
list, off of the other three selections, that you have exactly what I have: Joe Montana, Jerry Weiss, and Steph Curry.
Okay,
That's
fine.
that
Okay,
goes with that, you know.
okay.
But Willie Mays, for me, he just like Sandy Koufax put the LA Dodgers on the map when they moved to California. Willie Mays did the same for San Francisco because the Giants were a decent team when they left New York in the late 50s. They were decent. They had Willie Mays and Monty Irvin and Bobby Thompson, you know, and they came to San Francisco and they struggled for a little while. And then they got Willie McCovey, and you have that lineup of Willie McCovey, and you have Willie Mays, and you got Juan Marichal on the mound. That's pretty hard to that's pretty tough, right? And Willie Mays was at the center of that lineup until the early 70s when he got traded away to the Mets. But
Quick thing. To be fair for your Willie Mays pick, he hit 660 in one of the worst power ballparks to play
in Candlestick,
and
right?
and had he played anywhere else, my dad always used to tell me, like, man, if the guy played anywhere else, he'd have had 800. If
Yeah.
he'd have played any place else,
Yeah, I
So
can believe
yeah,
that. I can buy
okay,
that.
all
Okay,
right.
so moving on, we got one city left. You got one city left. I got one city left. This next
Okay.
city that we're going to go to is Houston, and
I
this
know
one
three
for
of them
me,
already.
and this one for me was really interesting because these are the people. These are the people that I had as far as under consideration for Houston. Okay. Bum Phillips, George Blanda, Guy Lewis, Warren Moon, Clyde Drexler, Craig Biggio, and Jose Altuve. Now, because I know Altuve was part of that Astros team, but if you look at his totality of his career, he's one of the best hitting second basemen we've seen since Joe Morgan.
I don't care.
You know,
He still
but
had to
he's
tap the can. I don't care. So but anyway, keep going.
okay. But for the unit for Houston, my Mount Rushmore of Houston is a little bit unconventional. I went with Akeem Olajuwon, Earl Campbell, Nolan Ryan, and the Astrodome. And let's start with the Astrodome first. I'll put the Astrodome on this because that put the city of Houston on the map
It did.
for not only sports, but just tourism. Okay, because everybody wanted to see the eighth wonder of the world. And you think about it, the Houston Astrodome had been the site of some of the most amazing sports moments over the last 60 years since it's been opened. Okay. It opened in 1965 with an exhibition game between the recently name changed, rebranding team now known as the Houston Astros. Before then, it was called the Houston Colt 45s, which, incidentally, I like that name. Anyway, it was the site of college basketball's game of the century. Now, if you look at the history of college football, you have at least 8 games just in the 20th century that was known as the game of the century. But in college basketball, there's only one. UCLA versus Houston in the Astrodome, 53,000 fans. Number 1 UCLA, number 2 Houston. UCLA was on a 47-game winning streak with Lou Alcindor, Mike Warren, Steve Patterson, Lucius Allen, right in the middle of their dynasty. Taking on Houston with Elvin Hayes. The game was played in the Astrodome. The Cougars, under head coach Guy Lewis, 38 game winning streak at home. Okay, and Houston ends up ending the UCLA streak, winning that game, and eventually losing in the national semifinal to the very same UCLA team by like 30 points. Okay, Mickey Mantle's hit the first home run in the Astrodome in that exhibition game. My most vivid memory of the Astrodome, Game 6, 1986 National League Championship Series, Astros versus Mets. The game that went 16 innings. The game that you affectionately known as the No Tomorrow game because the Mets did not want to see Mike Scott game.
Because they were not, because he had manhandled them in 2 previous starts of the series.
Right.
And they knew if they didn't win that night, it was over. You know.
It was also the site of the Battle of the Sexes tennis match between Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs in 1973. The site of the 1989 NBA All-Star Game. Karl Malone was named MVP of that game. And also 2 big-time heavyweight fights. Muhammad Ali against Cleveland Williams on November 1966, and Muhammad Ali again, this time beating Ernie Terrell in February of 1967. So the Astrodome is on the list as one of the members of the Mount Rushmore for the city of Houston. Next one, Nolan Ryan, 8-time All-Star, 1969 World Champion, 2-time ERA, 2-time National League ERA leader, 11-time strikeout leader. His number 34 retired by the Astros. 5,714 career strikeouts, 7 no-hitters. He's also, this is a very odd stat that I did not realize. He never pitched a perfect game, nor has he ever won a Cy Young. Which I think is like, I had to look that up. He never won a Cy Young. In his career, never won a Cy Young. He
on mediocre teams, though, with the exception of 86. And what was it, 81?
And 69 when he won the World Series with the Mets. But he was like the 3rd or 4th starter for the Mets, you know, behind Seaver and Koosman and Gary Gentry.
Wow.
Another member, and these 2 are no-brainers for the city of Houston. First one, the Tyler Rose himself, Earl Campbell, national and NFL MVP in 1979, 3-time NFL Offensive Player of the Year, NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year in 1978, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time NFL rushing champ, 2-time rushing touchdown leader, finished with 9,407 yards, 74 touchdowns, and it was the 1977 Heisman Trophy winner. The Tyler Rose, Earl Campbell, and rounding out the Mount Rushmore of Houston, Akeem Olajuwon, 2-time NBA champion, 2-time Finals MVP, 1994 NBA MVP, 12-time NBA All-Star, 6-time All-NBA First Team, 2-time NBA Defensive Player of the Year, the 1985 All-Rookie Team, 2-time NBA Rebounding Leader, and a 3-time NBA Blocks Leader. So for the city of Houston, Space City, Akeem Olajuwon, Earl Campbell, Nolan Ryan, and the Astrodome as my Mount Rushmore for Houston.
You have no argument from me because my Mount Rushmore was Ryan, Olajuwon, Campbell, and Warren Moon. But the Astrodome is probably a better pick because despite how iconic Warren Moon was, the Astrodome was even more iconic.
Yep. There you go. I appreciate that. Appreciate that, buddy. So we got one city left, and that is the city of, what do you have? Boston?
Boston. We got Boston.
Now this one should be very interesting because there's a lot there for Boston.
Because I had Belichick, Auerbach, Pedro, Yastrzemski, what's the dude name? Come on, Jim Rice.
Okay.
We got Jim Rice, Robert Parrish, Kelvin McHale, man. Every last one of them, no. So I wound up settling on these 4. Number 1, no brainer, Bill Russell. No brainer. Bill Russell. Hall of Fame, of course, 12-time All-Star, 11-time champ. Also won as a coach and a player, 4-time rebound champ, 11-time All-NBA, 5-time MVP, 1962-63 All-Star Game MVP, 1968, 69 All-D. I guess they didn't have all defensive teams then, or else he would have had
a bunch
selections littered across the board. Member of the 50 and the 75th NBA anniversary team. 4-time USBWA MVP, 2-time MBWA NBA MVP. Synonymous. He and Red Auerbach synonymous with success. I mean, they won so many that when you play spades and you get all 13 books, they call it running to Boston because of the 13 titles that they won. And all of that. Average 15.1 points, 22.5 boards, 4.3 assists. They didn't even count blocks, but it's safe to say that he had a lot, and he's an iconic player, but also an iconic ambassador for the game, as well as an iconic ambassador in terms of Black rights, getting Black American rights,
civil rights, social justice,
rights, and social justice, things like that. He's just as iconic for those things as he is for his accomplishments on the court. Hence, to me, no brainer, Bill Russell. They even named the MVP trophy after him.
Finals MVP
trophy after him. So this one here, just as no brainer. Larry Legend himself, Larry Bird. Just as no-brainer to me. Hall of Fame, 12-time All-Star, 3-time NBA champ, five finals appearances. They lost to the Lakers twice in 85 and 87. 10-time All-NBA, Rookie of the Year, all rookie team, obviously. 3 times All-D, 82 All-Star Game MVP, 2 times Finals MVP, 3-time MVP, all 3 in succession, 3 years in a row, and a member of the NBA 50th and 75th All-Star teams as well. He averaged 24.3 points a game, 10 boards, 6.3 assists per game. Basically shot 50 from the field, 38 from 3, 89 from the line. just a baller. Quintessential baller and one of the most notable figures in the arc of the NBA, because he's the other half of the tandem that he shared with Magic Johnson that really ushered in an unprecedented era of prominence and success for the league and made the league here to stay, put them on the map to stay. So one of the most notable figures.
Okay.
Third one. No brainer. Don't like him, but credit is where it's due, man. Got to give him credit where it's due. Tom Brady. Got to give him the credit, man.
Obviously.
I don't think he's the greatest quarterback of all time. I don't think he's the greatest player of all time, because I just think, players like, for example, to me, my favorite quarterback of all time is Johnny Unitas for me. Because for the longest time, until recently, he had still an abundance of passing records at a time when it wasn't a lot of passing that was just recently broken. And he was a pioneer because, he, along with Raymond Berry, they came up with the timing pattern of practice that's still used to this very day. And then they also came up with the 2-minute drill, a staple that's still utilized to this day as well. And they did that in the 50s. So, but anyway, takes nothing away from Tom, man. 15-time Pro Bowl, man. Wow. 7-time Super Bowl champ, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 3-time MVP, 5-time Super Bowl MVP, all-decade 2000s, all-decade 2010s. Honestly, even though he retired, he has a darn good shot of being a reasonable shot, rather, of still being all-decade for the 2020s.
Yeah.
He probably won't, but he have a reasonable shot. 2-time AP Offensive Player of the Year, and just a bunch of other accolades, man. Look at this record, man. 251 wins, 82 losses, man. 64.3 completion percentage, 89,214 yards. And the most important thing besides the lopsided one-loss record, man, look at this. 649 touchdowns to only 212 interceptions. That's just
that's
insane.
sick. That's sick.
That's
You know,
insane.
I
Maybe
mean,
he is the best of all time, man.
I mean,
Jeez.
like to beauty. I mean, beauty is always in the eyes of the beholder, is what they say. Okay, Tom Brady, just like you, he's not my favorite. He's not, in my opinion, the best quarterback for me. My best quarterback is John Elway. Okay, so, but you got to give credit where credit is due. You know what I'm saying?
Have to, man.
You got to give credit where credit is due. You know, with especially at a time when the quarterback position has become the most important position in all of football, he is pretty much has solidified that as being gospel throughout all of the NFL and every single level of college football, from Pop Warner all the way up through the NFL, is like the creme de la creme of all quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
And he's the one that everybody is essentially chasing after. He's essentially the one that everybody's like, okay, we'll be compared to this man for the next 30, 40, 50 years maybe. You know what I'm saying? Because his statistics and all the things that he has accomplished is far beyond anything pretty much anything anybody has ever conceived, you know, and that just goes to his talent, durability, system, whatever. Now, you could dislike him, you could not be a big fan of his, but still, like we said, been saying all night long, gotta get credit where credit's due.
But even that, right? Even if you're like, okay, only reason why he won because he played for the Patriots and he played under Belichick, right? He says, okay, fine. He said, okay, fine. I won him with the Patriots. I feel like playing with the Patriots no more. I'm sick of being old. I'm sick of all of that. So I'm gonna go to Tampa Bay and play for the Bucks, right?
Yeah.
He wins it again anyway. It's like, man,
here's the thing, though.
What can you say, man? You know?
Okay. Two things to that. One, he leaves Belichick. What has Belichick done? And I used to say Brown Brady would be nothing without Belichick. He proved that wrong so fast because he goes to Tampa Bay. And within a year, the first year, not only does he win the Super Bowl his first year, he becomes essentially the greatest quarterback in Buccaneers history. Think about that. He's the greatest quarterback in Buccaneers history right now. I mean, it's not like the Buccaneers has this long lineage of great quarterbacks in their history, but still, that's like saying that somebody goes to the Clippers and becomes the greatest player in Clippers history. Who else is there? Really? I mean, but still, he accomplished that. He won Super Bowls. He went to the Super Bowl and won it without Belichick. Belichick now is miring in college at the University of North Carolina and could barely get to a bowl game. Whereas in a situation in college football now where you win 5 games, they're looking at you as bowl eligible. And he can't even get to a bowl game.
But,
you know what I'm saying? So
you even look at this, man. The dude won it with the Bucks. Man, that's worth 3 Super Bowls.
Right.
But even the Patriots Super Bowls, right? He started out beating the greatest show on turf Rams.
Yeah.
Mike Martz, Kurt Warner, Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, Brian Marshall Falk. He starts out, he vanquishes them.
Yeah.
Then throughout the decade, he wins some more. He beats the likes, and I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but it's just the facts. He beats the likes of the Steel Curtain defense.
Yeah.
He beats the Ravens. He beats the Chargers twice, one of which he had no business winning the game.
Thank you.
He finds a way to win it. He finds a way. He did
not find a way to win it. The Chargers found a way to lose.
Then he beat Peyton Manning and the Colts, right?
repeatedly.
Repeatedly. He does all of that. He beat all of them, right? Then he get later in his career, right? Seahawks win easily the year before.
Yeah.
Over the Broncos and Peyton Manning. If they win 2, you when you name the defenses, the Monsters of the Midway, the Purple People Eaters, the Doomsday defense, the Steel Curtain, the Bears 46 defense, the Giants defense, you would name the Legion of Boom with them. They're
up there.
They win 1, they're up 14 in the third quarter on their way to not only 2 straight, but 2 straight over Manning and Brady. And an instant immortality where you have to mention them among the greatest defenses.
Yeah.
Now, with the aid of a lot of help from Pete Carroll, he finds a way to win that one too.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Then you fast forward a couple years after that. He's down 28-3 going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
He wins that one too.
Yeah.
Then he said, "I'm sick of playing with the." He goes to the Bucks, right?
Yeah.
Saints had beat them twice in the season, easy. He comes into New Orleans in the playoffs, ends Drew Brees' career. Boom, you're done. You're finished. Kaput. And he wins it, and he beats his last year in New England. He beat one of his last years in New England. He beats Mahomes on the road.
Yeah.
Then goes to the Bucks and beats him in the Super Bowl again. Man, there's nothing, and he's not my favorite quarterback.
Right.
The credit is just the credit, man.
Exactly.
You have to give him the credit, man. You're an idiot if you don't give him the credit.
Right.
He deserves all of the credit he gets and then some. He just does.
Okay, so you have Bill Russell, you have Larry Bird, and you have Tom Brady.
Yes.
Who's the fourth one?
Number 4. None other. Ted Williams. That's number 4. You know what I mean? Hall of Fame, 2-time MVP, 2-time. He won the Triple Crown twice.
Yeah.
The dude, a 19-time All-Star, 6-time batting title, 5-time Major League Player of the Year. For his career, the dude had 2,654 hits, 521 homers, 344 batting average, on base percentage 482. And researching this guy, this is the kicker, right? This is the one that really gets me more than anything else, right? I think I took it down, but I'm safe in saying it. The dude, okay, I got it here. The dude, man, right? He doesn't play baseball for 3 years. Serve in World War II, right? He missed 3 years for World War II. He comes back, wins the MVP. Man, get out of here, man.
The last man, Ted Williams, last batter to bat over 400 in a season. No one's done that since 1941.
Like, the dude sat out for 3 years and then comes back and wins the MVP, man.
And wins the MVP. Those are the 4 that I got, for Boston. I got those 4, Brady, Bird, Russell. I have Ted Williams, but I put a slash right by Ted Williams and also put Bobby Orr.
I considered him. But I know more about Ted Williams than hockey, so I took Ted Williams.
But the thing that trumps Ted Williams over Bobby Orr is the fact that Bobby Orr, even though he did win 2 Stanley Cups with the Bruins and Ted Williams did not win a World Series, Bobby Orr's career did not last long. If Bobby Orr is hockey's equivalent to Gale Sayers, in which his career was cut short by injuries. But when he was healthy, he was the greatest thing anybody had ever seen. And everybody that is a hockey fan knows the picture of Bobby Orr, scoring the game winner in Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals in 1970 against St. Louis. When he shoots the goal and he's like, you see him stretched out in midair, in celebration of the Bruins winning their first Stanley Cup since the 1940s. So Bobby Orr is up there with Ted Williams, but I gave Ted Williams the nod over Bobby Orr because Bobby Orr, as great as he was, he's basically the NHL's equivalent to Gale Sayers, where it was like a very, very good career that was tragically cut short.
But look at these two tidbits about Ted Williams, and then I'm done. Look at this. Age 38.
Okay.
The brother hit 388 with 38 homers and 87 ribbies.
Yeah.
And he played just 132 games, and he did that in 132 games. His last season, age 41, he plays 113 games, has 390 plate appearances, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dude hits 29 homers, 72 RBIs. He hits 316. On base percentage 451. Slugging 645. I'm no good no more. I quit.
And not to mention, though, Ted Williams, he hits a home run at his very last career at bat.
Wow.
1960, very last game of the season. He said he's retiring. His last plate appearance, he hits one into the Red Sox bullpen in right center field at Fenway Park, where a lot of his home runs ended up. Very last at bat, hits it out the yard.
Now, interesting question now. Is the ultimate give and take, right? Because you have to figure, okay, he's smack dab in the middle of his prime, and he went to fight World War II.
Right.
What would he have done? Now, you could argue on one hand where if he had those 3 years, perhaps he wouldn't have been able to play to age 41, perhaps. You could argue that.
Right.
But just for argument's sake, if everything still played out the same, what would his numbers be if he didn't sit out those 3 years?
I think he would probably have the all-time hits record for sure. All-time hits record for sure. Home runs, he wasn't really known as a home run hitter, like talking about, but he was known for hits. He wasn't he wasn't hitting home runs at a clip like Willie Mays or Hank Aaron or something like that. Even though Hank Aaron didn't really hit a lot of home runs. He was just consistent.
35, 30, 35.
It was
30.
just consistent.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Ted Williams was a consistent hitter. He was like 30, 31, consistently through his career. But without those 3 years, he probably would have had the all-time record for hits in a career. People call him the greatest hitter of all time, the greatest pure hitter of all time. And he turned hitting into like pretty much a science. You know what I mean? So, and it is ridiculous and he had like the most perfect swing for a left-hander you ever seen. And there's always this thing or this theory. What would have happened if Joe DiMaggio would have played for the Red Sox as a right-handed hitter, hitting the ball over the monster?
The green monster, yeah.
And then Ted Williams playing for the Yankees. Ted Williams with the Yankees with that short right field fence at Yankee Stadium. What the numbers would look like then.
But you would have to argue, man, that he is the all-time greatest hitter. Because even though you say he's not known for home runs, right?
Right.
344 lifetime with 521 home runs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, most of his contemporaries, like your Tony Gwynn's, Rod Carew, Wade Boggs, they can put up a lot of average and a lot of hits, but they don't have the power to go along with that. The only person that can approximate what he's doing in terms of average and power is perhaps Barry in the later stages of his career.
Right.
Hitting these ridiculous averages with the high on base percentage and the power numbers to go along with it. It's just best hit of all time, bar none. Easy.
Yep.
Ted Williams.
So that concludes our Mount Rushmore. And let's just do like a little quick rundown on the honorees, I should say, as far as like the guys that's going to be on the Mount Rushmore of these cities. And I'll go with mine first. Um, the Mount Rushmore for Washington, D.C. for me, Alex Ovechkin, Walter Johnson, Wes Unseld, and Joe Gibbs. For the city of Oakland, from the on the East Bay, Raleigh Fingers, John Madden, Al Davis, and the radio voice of the Raiders and A's Bill King. For Los Angeles, I have Magic Johnson, Sandy Koufax, John Wooden, and Vin Scully. Over in the Motor City, Detroit, Barry Sanders, Isaiah Thomas, Ty Cobb, and Gordie Howe. For Philadelphia, I have Julius Erving, Joe Frazier, Bernie Perron, and Chuck Bednarik. And to round out my cities is the city of Houston. I have Akeem Olajuwon, Earl Campbell, Nolan Ryan, and the Astrodome, rounding out my list.
Very good. For me, very briefly, city of Atlanta, I have Dominique Wilkins, Deion Sanders, Hank Aaron, and Ric Flair / the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Okay.
Chicago, we got Mr. Cub, Ernie Banks. We got Patrick Kane. We also have Walter Payton and finally Michael Air Jordan. No brainer. New York, we have Walt Frazier, Lawrence Taylor, Derek Jeter, and the Babe Ruth. Miami, we have Dan Marino, Dwayne Wade, rather. I'm sorry. Don Shula, and last but not least, Jimmy Johnson. San Francisco, we got Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Steph Curry, and Barry Bonds, but my partner has Willie Mays, which I'm not going to argue with one bit. And finally, the city of Boston. This is perhaps okay. I'm going to ask you a question after this.
Okay.
Bill Russell, Larry Bird, Tom Brady, Ted Williams. Now, to my question. Out of all of the cities that you mentioned, as well as me, I think, in my opinion, Boston probably has the most prodigious Mount Rushmore. What do you think?
I think it does. Like if you look back on all of the cities that we've done, you know, LA comes kind of close, but you know, with Magic, Sandy Koufax, John Wooden, and Vince Scully, as far as like its own, that best represents the city. But as far as like championships and overall success, you got to go with Boston.
New York is close.
New York is pretty close with Derek Jeter,
but not Boston though. No.
New York is pretty close. With Babe Ruth, you had Babe Ruth, Derek Jeter, Clyde Frazier, and Lawrence Taylor. I mean, those are some heavyweights as far as like being transcendent stars and things like that. But as far as like overall success, you can't go wrong with Boston. Chicago, with Ernie Banks, who didn't win a World Series, Patrick Kane, who won a couple of Stanley Cups, Walter Payton won one Super Bowl, Michael Jordan with 6 NBA titles. That's pretty good too.
Yeah. But I think, especially my side of the ledger, Boston definitely stands out for sure. And on your side, LA stands out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Detroit, Barry Sanders didn't win a Super Bowl. Isaiah Thomas won 2. Ty Cobb didn't win a World Series. And Gordie Howe won 4 Stanley Cups. So, but as far as like success, Boston might be, the best of the best as far as like championships.
Yes.
But as far as like maybe cultural significance, LA gives Boston a deep run as far as cultural significance.
I agree.
All right. But that was a good exercise, man. This was a good show.
Yeah, a lot of fun, man. And I as usual, man, this was your brainchild and an excellent one at that. And as always, I was so excited about this episode because I love, especially when you withhold what you're gonna do, and I don't find out until the rest of the listeners find out too. Right. And it's always something I didn't expect. And then, as usual, it's always something that I can learn because you really schooled me in terms of that hockey pick on for Chicago, man. You really,
Yeah.
learned a lot there, man. So I always
Yeah.
appreciate that, man.
All
Thank you.
right. So with that being said, we're gonna, close up shop right after this short message. Chuck, once again, man, thank you for joining me.
Anytime, brother. Anytime.
And we're going to be right back and close things up right after this. You're listening to the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast here on the Sports History Network. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. This podcast comes to you from the Bill King Memorial Studio here, the sports wing of TM4 Enterprises, located in suburban Atlanta in the shadow of Stone Mountain. Once again, don't forget to subscribe to the show to get new episodes whenever they are released. And also, if you would like to contact the show or perhaps share some story ideas, maybe tell us how we did, or maybe just to say hi, please email us at historically.speaking.sports@gmail.com. Once again, that email, historically.speaking.sports@gmail.com. And as always, please don't keep us a secret. Tell people about us. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers, tell your neighbors. Hell, tell a passerby on the street. If you think they like sports history, it would really help us out here. Thanks once again for joining us, and we will see you soon.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history. But as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.